Welcome back. Having installed Java successfully, let's get to the problem solving parts of the course. Programming is all about problem solving. I really love programming because I get to solve a lot of new problems every day. It gives me the feeling that I'm learning something new almost every day. Now, whenever we are doing problem solving, there are a few steps that we typically follow. Number one is to understand the problem. Let's say I would want to print a multiplication table. Let's say I would want to find out if a number is prime. The first thing I would need to do is to understand the specific problem. The second thing is to design a solution. How do I want to go about solving a specific problem? That's the design. That's where you break the problem down into multiple steps and try and solve it step by step. If it's a big problem, you cannot solve it at one go. What you do is to break it down to smaller problems and try to solve the smaller problems first. Step 3 is where we would actually write and test our program. This is where we would get into the language specifics like syntax. And we would write our program and we would test it. So this is exactly what you'd be doing whenever you get into any real world projects. You'd first understand the problem statement, then try and design a solution for it. If it's a very, very large problem, you'd actually break it down into multiple sub-problems and try and solve each one of them by writing your specific program. And to help you to get into the flow of problem solving, what we would do is in this course, we would be solving multiple problems step by step. Starting the next step, we would pick up a problem and we would look at how to solve it, and then we would write a program for it. One important thing I would want you to remember is learning to program is a lot like learning to ride a bike. The first steps are the most difficult. When you're starting to learn to ride a bike, you would see that the first few steps are the most difficult. The first few days are the most difficult ones. Once you get comfortable with it, you'd see that it's a lot of fun. And that's exactly how programming is as well. So have a little bit of patience and I'll see you in the next step. Welcome back. In this video, we would want to introduce you to the first challenge that we would be solving as a part of this course. The first problem that would be solving is a multiplication table. So we would want to print the multiplication table for 5. So this is the format that we would want to print the output in. So we would want to print 5 into 1 is equal to 5 and so on up to 5 into 10 is equal to 50. So this is the challenge, and what are the important concepts that we would need to solve this? Here are some of the important concepts that we would be using to solve this specific problem. We would be using Jshell, which is a Java REPL. We'll talk about Jshell a little later when we are introducing it to you. We'll learn about Jshell. We would learn about what is a statement, expression. We would learn about variables, and we would also learn about if statement, for loop, methods, or functions. So those are all the concepts that you would learn while we are attempting to solve the multiplication table problem. All these concepts would be introduced to you one by one as we go step by step solving the challenge. I'll see you in the next step where we would start with launching up Jshell. I'll see you in the next step. Welcome back. In this step, let's get started with Jshell. Do you know how do Python programmers start learning Python? They make use of Python shell. And that's the reason why Python is very easy to learn. In the earlier versions of Java, there was no Jshell. Before Java 8, there was no Jshell at all. And it was only in Java 9 that Jshell was introduced. And from Java 9, I think Java is very easy to learn. A lot of people before Java 8 used to complain that Java is difficult to learn. However, from Java 9, I think Java is very easy to learn. Jshell is nothing but a very, very simple REPL. Read, eval, print, loop. What does that mean? I'll go into command prompt and over here, I would type in Jshell. If I type in Jshell, it would take me to Jshell and you'd see welcome to Jshell version 16 or version 17 or version 18, whichever version you have installed. And over here, it says for an introduction, type /help intro. I'll type /help intro. What does it bring me? It says Jshell tool allows you to execute Java code getting immediate results. That is the most important part for me for Jshell. For example, if I would want to find out the value of 5 into 8. So this is 5 star 8. So 5 into 8. What's the value? It's 40. Let's do 5 plus 6. What's the value? 11. You can see how Jshell is coming back with an immediate response. If I type something wrong, let's say 5x and I'll say 8. I'm making a mistake in here because the multiplication operator in Java is not x, it is actually star. If I do this, you can see that Jshell is complaining. It says, hey Ranga, there is an error in your statement. It should not be 5x8, it should be something else. So Jshell gives you immediate feedback as soon as you make a mistake. And that's the reason why Jshell makes it easy to learn Java. So you type in one line of code and see the output. This makes learning fun because you see the results immediately. You don't need to write the entire program, run it, and then see the output in the console. You just type a line of code, you immediately see the output. This helps you to make a lot of mistakes and quickly find out what's going wrong. All the best programmers that I know of make use of Jshell. Jshell is not just a beginner's tool, but whenever I would want to actually explore an API, whenever I want to see how a new Java API works, I go to Jshell, quickly explore it, and then I would write a program using an IDE. Using Jshell, as we saw, is very, very simple. We just needed to type in Jshell at the command prompt, and we were inside Jshell. And if you type in /exit, you would log out of Jshell, and it says goodbye. So if you type in Jshell, you would be logging into Jshell, and you'd see Jshell in the command prompt in here. And if I type in /exit, I would be logging out of Jshell, and you'd see the folder path. When you see the folder path in here, it means you are logged out of Jshell. If you see Jshell in there, then it means you are inside Jshell. We would be logging into Jshell and exiting from Jshell a number of times during this course. So get familiar with logging in and logging out of Jshell. As we discussed until now, Jshell makes it very, very easy to learn Java. And that's the reason why we will use Jshell to get started in this specific course. By section 5, you will make all the mistakes that you would need to make to learn Java. And by that time, you'd be really, really comfortable with all the Java syntax. And that's when we would start using Eclipse as our IDE. So in the initial sections of the course, we'll be using Jshell, and starting section 6 is where we would get started with using the IDE, which is Eclipse. Are you excited to get started with Jshell and solve problems? I'll see you in the next.
Welcome back. The challenge which we set ourselves is to print the multiplication table. So we would want to print a multiplication table of this kind. In this video, let's discuss how to break this problem up and where do we start. So what do we start with? That's what we would want to discover in this short video. Typically when we do programming, we have problems. Solving the problem typically needs a step-by-step approach. You identify sub-problems to solve and then go about solving them. So think about this. What would be the sub-problems that you would want to solve when you would want to print a multiplication table? How do we break it down and where do we really start? Here are a few things that I have identified. One of the first things that we can do is get the computer to calculate 5 into 5 or 5 into 6. The second thing that we can do is to try and print this entire thing. So I would want to print 5 into 5 is equal to the calculated value. So whatever value is calculated from here, I would want to use it and print it in here. So we would want to first calculate, then print, and what we want to do is not just print 5 into 5 is equal to 25, right? So we would want to print from 5 into 1 to 5 into 10. And to be able to do that, we would want to do something similar to this 10 times. Not exactly the same thing because we don't want to print 5 into 5 is equal to 25 10 times. We would want to print the entire table with different values over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. Let's start with that kind of a game plan and let's see where it takes us. I'll see you in the next step. We would focus on calculating 5 into 5. Welcome back. As we discussed in the previous step, in this video, we would want to focus on getting the computer to do this calculation 5 into 5. And the first thing that we would need to do is to log in into Jshell. If you are already logged into Jshell, that's cool. So I'm launching up Jshell, just typing up Jshell at here. If you have questions about how to launch up Jshell, I would recommend you to watch the launching Jshell video, which should be 3 or 4 steps about this. Now, we are already into Jshell and we would want to calculate 5 into 5. What would happen? 5 into 5. It says error. The thing is, in Java, there are a few predefined operators. So, when I would want to multiply 5 with 5, the operator is star. So, 5 star 5. That's the multiplication operator. When I print 5 into 5 or 5 star 5, I can see that 25 is printed in here. There is a $1 and there is an arrow in here. Let's not worry about what it is for now. For now, you can see the value, the calculated value of this calculation. So 5 star 5, the calculated value is 25. This is called an expression. An expression typically has operands and operator. The star here is an operator. This is a multiplication operator. And these two, 5 and 5 in here, are called operands. These are also called literals. Literals in computers stand for values that don't change. So 5 here represents a number 5, an integer number 5. Don't worry about the terminology. If you are not able to get it first time, we will revise that multiple times during the course of this course. So what we are doing in here is we are typing in a simple expression. Let me type in another expression, 5 into 10. 5 star 10, and now you can see the value of it being printed in here. You have a variety of operations supported. So let's try a few. So 5 plus 10, 15. 5 minus 10, minus 5. Let's do a division as well. 10 by 2, 5. That's cool, right? So it's doing all the calculations for us. Integer numbers are basically whole numbers. So 1, 2, 3, and the negative numbers as well. So minus 5, minus 15, 0, million, billion, minus billion. All these are integer numbers. So on integer numbers, we looked at 4 different operations until now: multiplication, addition, subtraction, and division. The other interesting operator which is supported by Java is 9 mod 2. This is called modulus. This is basically your percentage sign. So 9 mod 2. When I'm doing an operation 9 mod 2, I'm getting a value of 1. What do you think it is? It's basically the remainder when 9 is divided by 2. So when 9 is divided by 2, you have 2 4s are 8 and you have a remainder of 1, which is 9 minus 8. So that's basically what is being printed in here. Let's try 8 mod 2. This should print 0. Yep, that's basically what you'd see in here. So there are a few operations that we looked at on integer numbers until now: multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and modulus. Now let's take a step back and look at the terminology again, right? So we did 5 star 5, this is multiplication, and this is called an expression. So 5 star 5 is an expression, 5 star 10 is an expression, 5 plus 10 is an expression, 5 minus 10 is also an expression. And in these expressions, star, plus, minus, division operator, and the modulus are called operators. So these are all operators, and the operations are performed on operands, which are 5, 10, 10 to 9 over here. These constants in here are also called literals. So these numbers here are literals. So until now, what we looked at are numbers, integer numbers, and the operations that can be performed on them. I would recommend you to stop the video in here and try and play around with these operators. Try and type in a few expressions and see if the results are as per your expectation. Now, let's move ahead. Until now, we looked at basic expressions. Actually, expressions can get much more complex than this. So let's say I want to do 5 plus 5 plus 5. You can have expressions like this as well. So 5 plus 5 plus 5. It prints 15. So we are using two operators in here. Actually, you can even have different operators. So 5 plus 10 minus 15. So we have two different operators, plus and minus in here, and we get the result which is printed in here, which is 0. So these are expressions using multiple operators. We can try a few more expressions. 5 into 5 plus 5. 5 5s are 25 plus 5 is 30. So that's cool. 5 into 15 divided by 3. It's find 15, 75 divided by 3 is 25. So you can go ahead, try and play around with these expressions. I'll end this video with a few exercises for you to try. So the expressions over here are used to calculate something, right? So let's do a few exercises where we calculate something really specific. The first exercise is to write an expression. So you'd want to write an expression to calculate number of minutes in a day. So you want to calculate how many minutes are there in a day. That's exercise number 1. And the next one is calculate number of seconds in a day. Think about it. So I would want to find out number of minutes in a day. How do I do that? And how I want to calculate number of seconds in a day as well. So how do I do that? So those are the two exercises I would leave you with. We will discuss solutions for these exercises in this video. But one of the most important things that you need to understand is you need to try to solve these problems by yourself. So try and see how you can do it by yourself. If you are able to work it out, that's fantastic. But if you are not able to work it out, that's part of the learning process. So the best way to learn is to try to solve it yourself and see how I do it. So that's the best way to learn. I would recommend you to try spending some time trying to do this exercise, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In this video, let's solve the exercises that we talked about in the previous video. So we would want to calculate the number of minutes in a day. So how do I find out? How do I find out the number of minutes in a day? So let's start with the number of hours in a day. So number of hours in a day is 24, and the number of minutes in every hour is 60. So 24 into 60, that's 1440. So that's the number of minutes in a day. Now, you can pause this video and try and solve the next exercise, which is to calculate number of seconds in a day. So we already have the number of minutes. How do I now calculate the number of seconds? If you use up arrow and down arrow, you can actually navigate through the previous expressions you have typed in. So up arrow and down arrow would be really useful in doing that. So let's type it from 0. So 24 hours in a day, each hour has 60 minutes, and each minute has how many seconds? It's 60. So 24 into 60 into 60. That's 86,400. That's the number of seconds in a specific day. I hope you had a lot of fun doing this exercise. Think about other things that you might want to calculate, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. One of the important things that you need to understand is that this is a course meant for beginners. And that's why we make sure that there are a lot of problems that we are trying to solve, and also there are a lot of exercises and puzzles. We kind of take it a little slow at the start of the course to make sure that you are having fun while you are learning. In this video, let's try a few puzzles with expressions. So until now, we saw these expressions, right? So this is an expression, star and plus are operators, 5 here are all literal values. So those are the things which we saw until now. Let's have even more fun with a few puzzles. So we saw 5 into 6 prints 30. But what would happen if I say something like this, 5 star star 6? What would happen? Think about it. Illegal expression. So this is what is your Jshell complaining that something is wrong with your expression. It says this expression is invalid. I have no idea what star star is. We are doing programming, and programming languages have a specific syntax and a predefined set of operators. So you need to adhere to them. If you don't follow them, then programming languages start to complain, and this is called an error. So the complaining of programming language is what is called an error. It says illegal start of expression. So try and do things like that, right? So $5, what happens? It says it's an error. I have no idea what you're trying to do. I would do 5 star slash 5. It says illegal start of expression. So you can try a few invalid expressions like this. It's important to understand that if you try and type in something which the programming language does not understand, they need to throw an error. Now let's move on to the next puzzle. Think about this. So 5 slash 2. So slash is what? Slash is division operator, right? So 5 divided by 2. What should be the result? Think about it, calculate it. What should be the result? It says 2. So it says 5 slash 2 is equal to 2. 5 divided by 2 is should be 2 and half, 2.5, right? But it's printing 2. Why is it printing 2? Think about it. So basically, the way programming languages work, this is true for most of the programming languages, including Java, is 5 is a integer number. It does not have any decimals. And same is the case with 2. 2 is also an integer number. So when you divide 5 by 2, the result is also an integer. So when you divide an integer by an integer, the result is also a integer. So 5 divided by 2 is 2. It's not 2.5. If you really want to get 2.5 as the result, then you need to divide a floating point value, a decimal value. So 5.0 is a decimal value. When I do 5.0 by 2.0, then you would get the value 2.5. So 5 is an integer constant, 5.0 is a decimal constant. It's a floating point constant. You talk about floating point constants and the fact that this is a double a little later. Don't worry about it. For now, the important thing to understand is when you are performing an operation, the data type of the operands is important. Here 5 is an integer, 2 is an integer. When I divide 5 by 2, I get an integer. When I divide a floating point divided by another floating point, you get the result as a floating point value. And even when you try and divide a floating point, you're performing an operation with floating point and a integer. So 5.0 is a floating point number, it has a decimal, and 2 is a integer number. So when I divide a floating point by a integer value, you get a floating point. So floating point and integer, the result is always floating point. So this is something you can remember. We'll discuss multiple variations of these as we go on in this course. Let's move on to another operation. So 5 plus 5 into 6. So think about this. What should be the result of this? So will it be calculated as 5 plus 5 and then the result is multiplied by 6? So that would mean 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 multiplied by 6 is 60. Or would it be 5 plus 5 into 6? So 5 into 6 is 30, 30 plus 5 is 35. So which one of them is true? It's printing 35. The way you need to think about this is in programming languages, there is something called precedence. So there is a precedence which is set, and the precedence typically in all programming languages is that multiplication, division, and modulus operators have greater precedence than plus and minus. So these three operators typically have greater precedence compared to plus and minus. So if you have any operation with these operators, first these operators get executed. So 5 into 6 gets executed first, and then 5 plus 5 into 6 is done. So 5 into 6 is 30, 30 plus 5 is 35, and that's the result which is printed in here. Let's now try a couple of other expressions. So you can say 5 minus 2 into 2. 2 into 2 has higher priority, star has higher precedence. So 2 into 2 is 4, 5 minus 4, 1. So you can think about what would be the result of this. So 5 minus 2 by 2, it's 4. So 2 by 2 is 1, and 5 minus 2 by 2 is 5 minus 1, which is 4. So now you might ask, what should I do if I would want to do this first? If I have to do 5 minus 2 first and then divide it by 2, or if I want to do 5 minus 2 first and then multiply by 2, how do I do that? In programming languages, we have something called brackets. So you use these brackets and you put your expression between these. So if I want to do 5 minus 2 first and then multiply by 2, then I would put them in brackets. So over here we have a couple of brackets, and then you can see that it prints the value 6. So it does 5 minus 2 first and multiplies it by 2. One of the good practices to follow in programming is always use brackets to indicate what you would want to happen. So if some new programmer comes in and sees 5 into 5 minus 2 star 2, it becomes confusing for him. So even though this expression, the previous expression is same as this, if you want to do 5 minus 2 into 2, you want to first do the multiplication and then do the subtraction, even then you can add a bracket in just to make it clear for the programmer who is going to look at your code later. I hope you are having a lot of fun with this course until now. I hope you are having a lot of fun with this course. Some of the course platforms ask for a review very early. So if you see a request for a review very soon in the course and you're not ready for it, feel free to click the skip review button. Now that we have played with expressions a lot, let's move into the other subproblems. I'll see you in the next step. Welcome back. In the previous two steps, we understood how to calculate 5 into 5 using an expression. We dug in depth into expressions and looked at a few puzzles and exercises related to it as well. And now let's move on to the next subproblem. We want to be able to print 5 into 5 is equal to 25, and this 25 is not really directly 25, but we would want to actually calculate the value of 5 into 5 and put it in here. So we would want to print this to the console. So we would want to print this on the Jshell console. How do we do that? That's basically the focus of this video. Let's start with a small tip before we go any further. If the speed at which I'm talking is too slow or too fast for you, you can adjust the playback speed. Look at the interface you are using for playing the video and you'd be able to adjust the speed of playback. Make use of this feature, so whenever you feel I'm talking slowly and you want to go faster, increase the speed, and if I'm going too fast for you, you can actually decrease the speed as well. So this is an excellent feature which almost all video UIs provide, so do make use of it. Okay, the tip aside, let's get back to the problem at hand. So until now, what we were doing is 3 into 4, right? So when we did 3 into 4, Jshell is actually showing something which is happening in the background. It's saying that something is created and it was assigned a value of 12. So what we want to do is we would want to actually print just 12. To print 12 to the output, there are some predefined methods in Java. So let's look at them and see what they are all about. Typically, in all programming languages, you have different methods. In Java, the method to print something to the console is system.out.println, and I can print in 3 into 4. Now you'd see that the only thing which is printed now is 12. So this all thing about the background stuff which Jshell is showing, it's not shown anymore. If you're not seeing 12 in here, then there might be a problem. So make sure that you're in Jshell. So you should have been logged into Jshell. So you would have opened up the command prompt or terminal and typed in Jshell. And at the Jshell prompt is where we are typing in this. And make sure that the case exactly matches. S here is capital. So it's system with a capital S followed by a dot, followed by out, followed by dot, followed by println. So this is exactly what it should be. And the other thing which should match is the open bracket and the close bracket in here. So make sure that you are in the Jshell prompt, make sure that you're using the right case, make sure that you're putting 3 into 4 between the brackets, and you should see 12 being printed in here. Now, what's happening in here? What is system.out.println? Why should I use brackets? Why should I use a closing bracket in here? Let's find that right now. One of the most important things that you need to understand is computers don't really understand human language. At least as of now, they don't really understand human language. They have their own languages with very strict rules, and we are using one of them, right? Java. So that's what we are learning right now. For computers to understand you, we need to understand those rules. These rules are called syntax. Computers don't really like it when you don't use the right syntax. For example, if I am removing the opening bracket in here, so I'm removing it and I'm typing it, it says, hey, what are you doing? I don't understand you. You're not giving me the right instruction. Programming languages are like my strict Dutch instructor. I was living in Netherlands for a while and I was trying to learn Dutch. The instructor was really awesome. After a couple of classes, she only responded to questions in Dutch. So if I went ahead and asked a question in English, I would get a blank stare. And I had to ask the question in Dutch. That really helped me to learn Dutch fast. Programming languages are very similar. They are very, very strict about syntax. If you make a mistake in the syntax, then they would throw you an error. Having said that, let's look at the syntax for this specific thing that we are doing in here. Whatever we are doing in here is called a statement. A statement is nothing but an instruction to the computer to do something. Over here, what we are telling the computer to do is to calculate 3 into 4 and print it to the output. So the way we are telling computer to calculate 3 into 4 is by using an expression. And what we are doing is we are passing this expression. This is called passing. So in the brackets, we are passing this expression to a predefined function or a method, to a predefined method in Java. So system.out.println is a predefined method in Java. We are saying, okay, take this 3 into 4, send it to this function or method. And what does this method do? This method prints it out to the console. So system.out.println is printing the calculated value out to the console. The statement we are executing in here is a method call, and system.out.println is how to refer to that particular method. The name of the method is println. Printline, println is a shortcut of println. So println, and there is system.out. System is one of the classes in Java which contains a variable called out, which contains a method called println. Don't worry about all these details right now. We'll talk about variables, classes, and all that kind of stuff a little later. For now, you can think of it like this is the way I refer to a method. So the method is system.out.println. So this is the path to a method, or for now you can call it the method name, and I am passing a value to it. The value which is being passed to a method is called a parameter. So I am passing 3 into 4, which is 12, an expression. The calculated value will be passed to the method system.out.println. The syntax of a method call is something of this kind. So method path followed by open brace and your parameter. So parameter followed by a closing bracket. So this is the syntax. Over here in our example, the method path is kind of system.out.println. The parameter is 3 into 4. If this conversation about method calls, parameters, syntax is sounding a little too confusing for you, do not worry about it. We'll get back to this in the puzzles and the exercises after this specific video. For now, the important thing is system.out.println. When you are passing it a value of 3 into 4, the 3 into 4 is calculated and 12 is printed to the console, right? What we would want to do is print something of this kind. 5 into 2 is equal to 10. That's what we would want to print in the output, right? So let's try what would happen if I do that with system.out.println. So I'm saying 5 into 2 is equal to 10 and close bracket. So it's name of the method followed by bracket, open bracket, close bracket, and between that is what I would want to print. Would this work? Aha, it says unexpected type, found variable, found value. Something is wrong. That's basically what it's saying, right? So this 5 into 2 is an expression, but 5 into 2 is equal to 10 is not really an expression. So what Java is telling me, what the Jshell is telling me is, okay, this is not the way you have to do that. So if you want to print some string like this, so this is what we are doing in here is we are printing the calculated value 3 into 4. What we are trying to do in here is we would want to print this as it is. So we would want to print 5 into 2 is equal to 10 as it is for now. We'll try and worry about how to get the calculated value in here a little later. But for now, let's focus on how to get the 5 into 2 is equal to 10 to the output. How do I do that? The way you need to do that is to use something called a string. So in programming languages, we use strings to represent text. So whenever you put something between double quotes, so typically most programming languages either use double quotes or single quotes to represent text. So now if I press enter, you'd see that 5 into 2 is equal to 10 is printed out to the console. Here what we are sending in is a integer value. Here what we are sending in is a string value. We'll talk about primitives and string class later in the course. For now, the important thing is whenever you want to create a string value, you put it in double quotes. Here 3 is a integer literal. We also looked at floating point literals 3.0 by 2, where 3.0 is the floating point literal, and now we are introducing the string literal to you. So if you want to type something between double quotes, that becomes a string. So if you do anything with it, so if I do system.out.println 5 into 2 between double quotes, it will not calculate the value, it just prints 5 into 2. However, if I'm trying to do 5 into 2 like this, what it does? It calculates the value. In this step, we introduce the system.out.println method. Whatever value is passed to it, whether it's a string literal or whether it's an expression that needs to be calculated, it would be calculated and printed out to the console. That's what system.out.println does. I would recommend you to try playing around with system.out.println and print a few other values. I'll see you in the next step where we would talk about different exercises that you can try and do. Welcome back. In the previous step, we executed our first statement with a method call. We executed system.out.println and passed a numeric expression to it as well as a string literal to it as well. Now let's try a few exercises to make sure that we understood it completely. The first exercise is I would want you to print hello world to the output, and we would want to use system.out.println. The next exercise, the second one, is to print 5 into 3 as it is. So I don't want to see 15 in the output. I would want to see 5 into 3 as it is in the output. The third one is to print the calculated value of 5 into 3. So I would want to see 15 printed in the output. Having done all these, now you can think about how to print the entire mathematical table of 5 now. In the previous step, we saw how to print something to the output. If you have to do the entire mathematical table of 5 right now, how would you do that? The next one is to print the number of seconds in a day using system.out.println. And the last exercise is to revise the syntax. So we executed 5 exercises. We would have executed 5 exercises by then. So make sure that you understand every bit of the syntax for all the 5 of them. You can solve these exercises, and I would see you in the next step where you would try and solve them. The first exercise is to print hello world. How do I do that? It should be easy. Up arrow, I would want to print hello world as it is. So if I do system.out.println hello world, will it work? Nope. It gives you an error. If I say hello world, does it work? Nope, that doesn't work as well. The thing is, this is a string that we would want to print to the output. So I would need to create a string literal. So I'm creating a string literal and typing in hello world. And now you can see hello world printed out. That's cool, isn't it? Let's move on to the next exercise. The next exercise is to print 5 into 3 as is. So if I do something of this kind, let's say if I do system.out.println 5 into 3, what would be printed is the value. If I want to print 5 into 3 as is, I would need to print 5 space into space 3. That's exactly what is printed out to the output. That's cool, isn't it? So we have done this. This is done. Print calculated value of 5 into 3. Aha, I have done that earlier. So it's system.out.println 5 into 3, 15. That's cool. So let's tick this off as well. Now, how to print the mathematical table of 5 as nerf? Think about it. I think the best way, based on whatever we have learned until now, would be to say 5 into 1 is equal to 5. So I'm putting it as a string literal, and now I can change all others. 5 into 2 is equal to 5. 5 into 3 is equal to 5. This is not very good. This is almost a dumb way of doing it, but based on the concepts that we have learned until now, this is the best possible way. We'll learn a lot of more efficient ways of doing this a little later. Now, let's check this off. Number of seconds in a day using system.out.println. Up arrow again. And what I would want to print is a calculated value. So if I put it in double quotes, what would happen? So I would want to find out number of seconds in a day. So let's start with our 24 hours, 60 minutes in an hour, followed by 60 seconds, right? So what would be printed? It would be printed as is. We should not use double quotes. We need to put directly the expression in system.out.println, and now I would be able to see 86,400. That's the number of seconds in a day. That's cool. And now let's look at the syntax again. So in the syntax, the most important thing to understand is this is how you refer to a method. Whatever you're passing in here is called a parameter. Here we are passing one parameter, which is an expression. This gets evaluated and passed to this method. Whatever we have in here are literals, which constitute the operands of the expression, and we have operators star in here as well. Over here, what we are sending in is a string literal. So we are sending a string value. So to the system.out.println, the string value is sent, and that is printed as it is. This is very similar to what we did when we sent hello world. So there is no difference except that here the string value is 24 into 60 into 60. Here it's hello world. Okay, that's all there is to syntax revision as well. So in this quick video, we looked at all the stuff related to system.out.println. I hope you are having fun with it. I'll see you in the next video where we would talk about a few more puzzles related to this. Welcome back. In this video, let's look at some of the puzzles related to system.out.println. So let's start with a basic one, right? So I'm printing hello world with two spaces, three spaces, four spaces. What would happen? It would print the hello world with those many spaces between. So earlier when we talked about expressions, we said the spaces do not matter, right? So here I can give as many spaces as I can, and it does not really matter for the most part because it would print the value, the computed value of this expression. But inside a string literal, space does matter, because if I want to print hello world with a space, it's like this. If I don't want space in here, then it's hello world as a single word. So here it's two words, here it's one word. So space does matter inside string literal. So inside the string constant values, space does matter. The next thing is case of the method, right? So here we have system.out.println. So if I say system.out.println, what would happen? Think about it. I'm changing s to small. It says an error. It says package does not exist. We'll learn about packages a little later, but the most important thing for you is right now it's an error. So it's not just the system, but any of the things which is present in here. So O caps error. Even if you make P caps, it's an error. The only thing in here which you can change the case without breaking the whole thing is the case inside the string. So inside the string, whatever case you make use of, that's exactly what is printed out. In summary, all the Java class names, method names, all the things that are part of the syntax are case sensitive. So if you give a small case instead of a uppercase, or if you use a uppercase where lowercase has to be used, you'll get an error. However, inside the string literals, it does not really matter, right? It's exactly what you would want to see in the output. Now, let's say I would want to print double quote in the output. So I would want to print this in the output. What would happen? It says error. So if I want to print double quote in the output, how do I do that? The way you can do that is by using something called an escape character. So you need to put a slash before it. So if you put a slash before it, then the double quote would be printed as is. So if you have just the double quote, the thing is Java thinks the entire string has ended in here. It does not know what to do with this. So that's what it's complaining about, because string ends starts with a double quote and ends with a double quote. So as soon as it sees a double quote, it thinks the string has ended. It says, okay, the string hello is there, but what is this world thing there? So that's the reason why we have to escape the double quote. So we'll escape the double quote by putting a slash before it, and hello world. That's what is now being printed to the output. The next thing I would want to do is I would want to split hello and world into two lines. I would want to print hello on one line and world on another line. How do I do that? The way I can do that is by using a new line character, that is /n. So if I just type in n, hello n world. However, if I type in hello /n world, hello and followed by /n, that's a new line character followed by world. There's a space between the /n and the world, that's why you'd see a space in here as well. But if I actually remove that space, then it's hello world, one below the another. And if you don't really want a space after hello, then you can do this. It almost looks the same, but there's an additional space which is printed in here, which is not in here. These are escape characters. There is another escape character called /t, which is to print a tab. So there is a tab which is printed in here. And the last escape character is to print slash itself. So if I want to print slash itself, then I would need to do this. So what would be the output? Think about it. So if I do a hello / world, what would be the output? It's single slash. If I want to get two slashes, what should I do? Yep, I should do 4. So hello //world. So all these slash things are called escape characters. We looked at /n, which is a new line character, // which is to print a slash. We looked at /double quote, which prints a double quote out. And we looked at /t, which prints a tab like this. Try and play around with these escape characters. I'm so sure you'll have a lot of fun with them. The last thing we would want to look at is a couple of other inbuilt methods in Java. So we looked at one of these inbuilt methods, right? System.out.println. There are a lot of other inbuilt methods which are present in Java. Let's start with one of them which is used to do mathematical calculations, that is math.random. So math.random generates a random value, and the thing is math.random does not expect any parameter. So the name of the method is math.random and it does not expect any parameter. How do I execute it? Would this be good? Nope, that's not sufficient. So math.random, if you would want to execute it, the way you would want to execute it is you're missing the open brackets. If you want to execute a method or call a method, you need to use the brackets. So it's math.random followed by the brackets. So this would execute the method and return a value back. So this is a value between 0 and 1. This is kind of a random value. So every time you execute this method, you will get a different value. But the most important thing as far as you are concerned is the syntax to call a method. So the syntax is very simple. Math.random followed by open bracket, close bracket. That's it. So this math.random does not accept any parameters. In the previous examples that we saw until now, we were using hello world as the parameter, right? So this is the parameter. We pass a string literal as a parameter to system.println. The other thing that you can do is you can pass multiple parameters. So let's say there's a method called math.min and I would want to find out the minimum between 23 and 45. How do I do that? Will this work? Nope. Let's try this. 23 for space 45. Will this work? Nope, this doesn't work. The way you can pass multiple parameters is to separate them by a comma. So math.main 23 comma 45. So now it says the minimum of 23 and 45 is 23. So similar to that, if let's say this is 23 comma 4, it would say the minimum is 4. The last thing which we would want to look at is the math.max method. This would print the maximum, so it says 23. So I hope you had a lot of fun doing the different puzzles which are present in this exercise. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye. Welcome back. In this video, let's look at an interesting feature in Jshell. The ability to allow you to type multiple lines of code. Let's say int I is equal to 5, right? So I can type it in one line, or if I say int j is equal to, so this is an incomplete statement. When I press enter, Jshell asks, you have not really completely entered everything, just try and enter the remaining part. And then it would take that specific thing. So the same thing works even with, let's say, system dot, let's say, out dot println. And after that, what it's trying to do is it's trying to print a variable called println. In these kind of situations, you need to actually try and say system.out.println. Nope, I'm not searching for a variable, I'm searching for a method. And then Jshell would go ahead and say, okay, give me what you would want to print. I'll say test and press enter, and then it says, okay, you have not really entered the closing parenthesis yet, go ahead and enter. And then it would execute that specific statement in. The other interesting thing is in Jshell, you can actually have multiple statements on the same line. So I can say I is equal to 10 and j is equal to 12 separated by semicolons. Jshell does exactly this even when you type in a if statement. So if let's say true, and let's say I did not enter anything, it would say, okay, enter what you want to do. If I press a block, open brace, then it says, okay, tell me what to do. I is equal to 11. As long as you keep entering stuff, without entering a closing brace, it would say, okay, keep entering more stuff, keep entering more stuff. And when I press the close brace is when it starts executing. And then you would see that I has the value of 12. I hope you are having an interesting time in the course and you are excited to learn more. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at how to print something out to the console, right? So if I wanted to print 5 into 2 is equal to 5, oops, that's not right. If I want to print 5 into 2 is equal to 10, this is how we would want to print it. The important thing about this is here, the value of 10 is not being calculated. I am actually hard coding the value of 10 in here. I would want to be able to calculate the value of 5 into 2 like it in here. So I would want to be able to do 5 into 2 is 10 and I would want to say 5 into 2 in here and I would want the computer to calculate the value for us. How do we do that? That's basically what we would want to focus on in this specific video. One of the important things is system.out.println only supports printing out text to the output. It does not allow replacing values. And to be able to replace values, we would look at a new method. The new method we would be looking at is instead of println, it's printf. You can see that printf is doing a lot of stuff. It's actually printing out 5 into 2 is equal to 10 and it also returns something called a print stream. You don't really need to worry about the print stream right now. The important thing for you to note is the fact that even though it's printed, this print stream is getting printed as well, and that's not cool. What we can do is to call another method on this. So I'm saying system.out.printf 5 into 2 is equal to 10 dot println. So now when I press enter, this would actually be the same output as earlier. So 5 into 2 is equal to 10, 5 into 2 into is equal to 10. So what we are doing in here is doing exactly the same thing as println. So now we are able to use printf and do exactly the same thing as println. But the fun thing about printf is that you can print calculated values with it as well. So system.out.printf, you're passing a string literal right now. It's not really a calculated value. This is just a literal for now. There are no calculated values in it. And we are calling a dot println method on it. So what we are doing in here is on the result from this method. So whatever result this method is returning, whatever result the printf is returning, which is a print stream, we are calling another method on it. The method which we are calling is println. The println makes sure that there is a new line character which is printed after it. So that's why you are seeing the new line character here. If you see it in here, there is no new line. So 5 into 10, 2 is equal to 10 is printed and $45 is printed right after that. Now we would want to print a calculated value using system.out.printf. How do we do that? In system.out.printf, you can use a modifier. So the modifier is percentage followed by a character. For integer values, the modifier is d. So we want to do 5 into 2 is equal to 10 percentage d comma the value you would want to print. So let's say I would want to print 5 into 2. So what we are doing is we are now sending in two parameters. One is a string literal, 5 into 2 is equal to 10 percentage d followed by 5 into 2. What would happen? It's printing 10 twice because one is the 10 that we are passing, the other one is the calculated value. What I'll do now is I'll remove the 10 that we printed in. So 5 into 2 is equal to percentage d and 5 into 2. So 5 into 2 is equal to 10. So now what we are able to do is we are able to calculate the value for 5 into 2 and print it in here. So 5 into 2 is equal to 10 is being printed with a calculated value. This is the reason why we are using printf instead of println. Println does not support formatting of this kind. Let's look at another example of system.out.printf. So over here, what I would want to do is I would want to print three different values: percentage d, and you can pass in three parameters now. So 5, 7, and 5 into 7. So let's see what is printed now. 5, 7, 35. So instead of this 5 is printed, instead of this 7 is printed, and the calculated value is printed instead of percentage D in here. So that's cool, right? 5, 7, 35. I can actually now modify this to say 5 into 7 is equal to percentage D. 5 into 7 is equal to 35, and all the things are picked up from here. So none of the values are hard coded in the string literal. We are actually replacing it by passing them as parameters. This is one of the first times we are passing in 4 parameters. So here we are passing in 4 different parameters to printf, and it's able to use them to generate the string that needs to be printed out, which is 5 into 7 is equal to 35. That's cool, right? In this step, what we have learned is how to print calculated values to the console. In the previous exercises, we were actually directly printing something of this kind. Find 2 is equal to 10. Now, we are actually doing the calculation and printing the calculated values out. The exercise I would want to leave you with is to generate 5 plus 6 plus 7 is equal to the value of 5 plus 6, 7, 18. However, I would want you to use system.out.printf, and inside the string literal, I would want to use the expression using percentage Ds. You are not allowed to use direct values in there. So you need to do something of this kind to print this 5 plus 6 plus 7 is equal to 18. I think you need to pass in 5 parameters. I'm sure you'll be able to work that out and print this similar to this. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye. Welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at how to use system.out.printf to print a calculated value to the console. So we calculated 5 into 7 and put it into the output by passing it as part of the string literal in here. The exercise we left you with was to calculate the value for 5 plus 6 plus 7, which is 18, and print it using system.out.printf. So how do we do that? Let's see that right now. So we want to print 5 plus 6 plus 7. So 5, 6, 7. The expression which we want to use is 5 plus 6 plus 7. And over here, it's into star D. Actually, it should not be into, it should be plus. So let's change that quickly. So this is what we were looking for. So percentage D, percentage D, percentage D, percentage D. So there are 4 arguments which are passed in to replace those things in here. That's cool, right? 5 plus 6 plus 7 is equal to 18. It was a very simple exercise to do. I hope you had fun doing that exercise, and let's now get into the puzzles directly for this specific topic. So system.out.printf, let's say I'm not passing in sufficient number of parameters. What would it do? You can see that it throws an exception. So it's saying there is a format specifier percentage %d, but you are not passing in sufficient number of arguments. If you remove the percentage is equal to percentage %d, it would succeed because then the number of arguments matches. If I remove 7, it would again complain because there are 3 format arguments in here, 1, 2, 3, but number of parameters that we are passing in having values is only 2. That is the reason why it starts failing. However, let's do the reverse. So if I say percentage d plus percentage d plus percentage d, and I pass in 5, 6, 7, 8. You can see that it ignores the last parameter. So here there are 3 modifiers. However, I'm passing 4 values. What it does is it takes the first 3 and uses them. So that's an interesting tidbit about system.out.printf and how it works. The other thing is you can use system.printf to print strings as well. And how do you do that? The way you do that is by saying percentage %s. So system.out.printf percentage %s, and I can pass in a string literal testing print percentage %s comma testing. So now this percentage s is a string. So I'm saying print testing as a string. Percentage d is for integers, percentage s is for string. The other kind of values you can print are floating points. So let's try a simple example. So 5, let's say I'm printing 5.5, 6.5, 7.5. What would happen? It says it's an illegal format conversion exception. It says I'm trying to pass in a floating point value and you're trying to print it using percentage d. Don't do that. The way you need to do that is by passing in percentage f. Now you can see that all the values are printed in here. In this and the previous step, we looked at system.out.printf and how you can print a calculated value using it. In the next step, we would start using that and apply it to our multiplication table problem. I'll see you in the next step. Welcome back. Before the previous step, this is how we printed the multiplication table. And in the previous step, we learned how to use expressions to calculate values and put the values into the output that is being printed. So instead of println, we started using printf function. And now we print the same thing, however, using calculated values. In this video, we'll introduce variables to you and we'll try and figure out how variables would help make our problem easier to solve. Now, let's get back to the big picture. We would want to print the 5 table. So we would want to print the 5 multiplication table. So right now, if you are given a chance, how do we do that? So 5 ones are 1, 5 twos are 2, 5 threes are 5 twos are 10 and 5 threes are 15. So all that we are doing is changing this value. So 1 over here, it's 2 over here, it's 3 over here, it's 4 over here. The value is changing from one statement to another. Is there any concept in programming that can represent a changing value? That's where variables come in. Let's look at a very simple example of a variable. I'm saying int number is equal to 10. So I'm saying int number is equal to 10. Now number has a value 10. We'll discuss about the syntax, we'll discuss what is int, and we'll discuss the specific format in which we have written this. And now I can say number is equal to 11. The value of number now changes to 11. So if I print number now, it says number has a value 11. I can say number is equal to 12, and now number has a value of 12. So I can try and print number, it prints a value of 12. You can see that this thing called number at different points has different values. The value of number is changing. So here this is a constant. So 4 is a constant, 3 is a constant, it's a literal. The number here has a value of 10 and we are changing it to 11 here and we are changing it to 12 here. This is what is called a variable. A variable is something whose value can change over the lifetime of the program. So in the program at different stages, these variables have different values. Let's quickly look at the syntax. The syntax to declare a variable is very simple. So the type of the variable followed by the name of the variable. So type followed by name is equal to your value, the initial value that you would want to assign. That's the syntax. The type which we are using in here is int. Int stands for integer. Integer can hold a huge range of integer numbers. So it can store integer numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4 or 15, 20, minus 15, minus 20 and things like that. The name which we are giving to the variable is number. So number is the name that we are giving to a variable. Once we give the variable a name, we can use that name to refer to the variable at multiple places. So here it's number is equal to 11. Here we are saying number is equal to 12. So it's simple. It's type. First is the type, then is name of the variable. So I'll say number 2 is equal to 25. So the second number is 25. And now I can change the value of number 2. So number 2 is equal to 100. This statement is called a declaration. The declaration of the variable declares what type it is and what is the name of the variable. So the declaration says the type of this variable is int and the name is number 2, and it also includes here the initial value. So this is called declaration, and this statement in here number 2 is equal to 100, this is called assignment. You should not confuse this with a is equal to operations which are done in mathematics. It's not number 2 is equal to 100 doesn't mean both are equal. It means that the value 100 is copied into number 2. We'll discuss about assignment operator in detail a little later, but for now you can kind of think that the 100 is copied into number 2. So number 2 holds a value of 100. Now we have a variable. How does it help with our problem? Earlier we were using this to print our multiplication table. Now what I would do is I would create a variable called int I is equal to 1. What I would now need to do is to change this statement to use I instead of 4. So over here wherever there is 4 I'll replace it with I. So instead of 4 I'm using I. You can see what would happen now. What is happening? It's printing 5 into 1 is equal to 5 into 1, which is 5, because I has a value of 1. So what is the value in I? I has a value of 1, and it is being used to print it. You can see that the I can be now used in expressions. So 5 into I is 5 because I has a value of 1. 5 into I is 5. Now what I can do now is I can say I is equal to 2, and now the same statement that we executed earlier, this is the exact same statement as we have executed in here, and this statement now would say 5 into 2 is equal to 10. And if I say I is equal to 3 and execute the same statement again, it would say 5 into 3 is equal to 15. You can see the magic unfolding right now, right? So based on the value of I, this statement prints different values because I is a variable. So now I'm changing the value of I, and this statement can now print different multiples of 5. So let's take I is equal to 10. What would happen? This would now print 5 into 10 is equal to 50. Congratulations! You have defined your first variables, and also you have used variables in the system.out.printf statement to print the 5 multiple. Now this makes the whole problem much more simpler, is because now if I am able to execute this statement for different values of I, so if I can execute this statement for I is equal to 1, I is equal to 2 to I is equal to 10, then I am done. Before we go there, let's have an exercise. The exercise which we would recommend you to do is to create 3 integer variables. So create 3 integer variables, A, B and C. So to create 3 integer variables and create a statement, you can use system.out.printf to print the sum of these 3 variables. So you would want to print the sum of these 3 variables, that's A plus B plus C. And after that, modify value of A and print the value of A plus B plus C. Modify value of B and print the value of A plus B plus C. I'll see you in the next video where we would do this exercise as well as talk about a lot of different puzzles related to variables. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In this video, let's discuss a few exercises and puzzles related to variables. Let's start with the exercise that we talked about. we would want to create three variables int a, b, and c. So how do I create three variables? Int a, and let's assign a few values as well. Int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 20, int c is equal to 30. And what we would want to do is we would want to create a statement for printing the sum of these three variables. So how can I do that? So I can say system dot out dot printf. I can say a plus b plus c is equal to a plus b plus c, right? No, because it would just print as it is. So if I do this dot println, as we discussed earlier, this would just print a plus b plus c. What we would want to print is the values. So I would need to say a, b, c, and a plus b plus c, and replace all these with percentage d, percentage d, percentage d, and percentage d here as well. You can see that now I'm printing the values of ABC and A plus B plus C. So 10 plus 20 plus 30 is equal to 60. That's cool, right? So now let's change the value of A. How do I change the value of A? Think about it. How do I change the value of A? I can type in A is equal to 50. And now if I print the same statement again, 50 plus 20 plus 30. Next, I would change the value of B, 60. Same statement again, 50 plus 60 plus 30 is equal to 140. You can try changing the value of C and printing the value of A plus B plus C, and you'd see that the value of the variable would be changed and the statement would be updated reflecting that specific thing. That's cool, right? So that's why we use variables. Variables have different values. Those programs are executed based on the current value of that specific variable. Now, let's get to a few puzzles related to variables. Let's say I have a variable which I have not really declared yet. So typically the way we declare a variable is int I is equal to 10. So I'm assigning a value of 10, right? So let's say I would want to create a new variable. So I'm saying int new variable, and I would press enter. You can see that the new variable is automatically created with a value of 0. This is something which is Jshell specific. When we really get into our IDE and try and run the programs there, you would see that when we create a variable, it's not really initialized. But in Jshell, the value is being initialized to 0. So if I try and print new variable, it gets a value of 0. Let's now try and use an undeclared variable. So let's say I'm not really declared a variable and I'm trying to use it. It says variable undeclared variable cannot find symbol. So if you have not defined the variable, then it will not be available at all. So if you want to use the int undeclared variable, then you would actually first declare it. So the way we would declare it is int undeclared variable. It's now initialized to a value of 0. Now I can go ahead and print undeclared variable or use undeclared variable in expressions. Now I can do that, right? So 5 into undeclared variable is 5 into 0 is 0. If you don't initialize the variable, in Jshell, a value of 0 is being assigned. And if you don't declare a variable, you cannot use it. You can use a variable only after you declare it. And now I would try and store int number is equal to 5.5. So 5.5 is a floating point value. It's having a decimal. Can I store it into number? Think about it. It's error. It says incompatible types. Possible lossy conversion from double to int. Double is one of the floating point formats. We'll talk about it a little later. But for now, what it's saying is you cannot take a floating point value and put it into a integer value. So Java is strongly typed language. By that, it means that you have to define a type for all variables. So all variables need to say, I am an integer, I am a string, I am a floating point value. And you can only store that kind of values in there. I cannot say number is an int and try and store a string value in it. So if I try and do this, it says nope, you cannot store a string into an integer. This is because Java is a strongly typed language. However, if you have a previously declared value, let's say int number is equal to 5, I can use number to create another variable. So I can say number 2 is equal to number. What would happen? The value of number gets copied into number 2, and number 2 has a value of 5. In this step, we looked at the basic exercises and puzzles related to variables. Especially during the puzzles, we understood that Java is a strongly typed language. You have to declare a variable before using it. You have to tell what type it is before you would use it. And you cannot store values of other type in the variable. You can only store the values of the type it is declared. So number is an int, so it can only store integer values. Until the next video, bye-bye. To be a great programmer, you need to understand variables very well. And that's the reason why we are creating 4 videos to give different perspectives around variables. We will start off looking at how variables are stored in memory. We would look at the different practices, good practices in naming a variable, as well as the rules. What can a variable name be? What should a variable name not be? And all that kind of stuff. We'll also look at the different variable types, the primitive variable types which are present in Java. And after that, we would look at a few important assignment related operators. So this sequence of 4 videos would help you to understand variables in depth. In the next video, we would start with how variables are stored in memory. Until the next video, bye-bye. Welcome back. In the previous step, we looked at variables and a few exercises and puzzles related to them. In this step, we will try to understand variables and how they are stored in memory. One of the important things is once you are able to visualize how variables are stored in memory, it makes it very easy for you to understand them. The thing which we discussed until now is a variable is something whose value can change over a period of time. So let's say I'm declaring a variable int a is equal to 5 and int b is equal to 10. So how do they get stored in memory? Let's see that right now. So a is equal to 5, b is equal to 10. Let's open up a spreadsheet and see how it would be stored. So let's say a gets stored in the memory location 5008 and b gets stored in here, right? So your computer memory is just like a set of boxes, right? So you have a number of memory locations based on the size of your computer memory. We have simplified it just to have a set of 10 cells, and let's say all the variables are being stored in your computer main memory. As soon as you define int a is equal to 5, what would happen is a name is a and value is 5. Any variable has a name, it has a value, and it also has a specific location in memory where it is stored. When we say int b is equal to 10, now a new value is created 10 and we have a name of b for it. So the name is what we use in our program to refer to this memory location. So we are using a name a to refer to the location 5008. We are using a name b to refer to the memory location 5012. So when we say a is equal to 100, what would happen? A is equal to 100. So 100 value gets copied into the memory location referenced by A. So A is referring to a memory location. Which one? This one. So the value of 100 gets copied into this. Now let's say I go here and I say int C is equal to A plus B. So what I'm saying is C is equal to A plus B. So A plus B gets calculated. A plus B is 100 plus 10, 110. and the value gets stored into C. So a new variable would be created somewhere on memory, 110, and the value is C. Now I can do something like A is equal to C. What would happen? The value of C gets copied into A. So A has a value of 110 now. So A, the value of C is 110. This gets copied into value of A. So this is how all the things happen in memory when we do programming. So as soon as we create variables, as soon as we modify the values of the variables, what is actually getting changed is the values in the memory. These are just the names that we give to reference to a specific memory location. I thought it would be great for you to understand what's happening in the background so that you can try and visualize what is happening, and this would make understanding the rest of the things that we would discuss much more easier. In this video, we took a background look at how variables are stored in memory. The way you can think about a variable is just like a box which has a name, which has a value, and which has a specific memory location. The other thing that variable also has is a type. In Java, you would need to declare the type of the variable. You cannot change the type of a variable during the execution of the program, and also you cannot store values of other types into this variable. So if this A is an integer variable, you can only store integer numbers. You cannot store floating point numbers, or you cannot store strings into it. Until the next video, bye bye. Welcome back. When you're programming, you'd create a number of variables, and there are a lot of rules around how to name a variable. There are rules which you should strictly follow, and there are recommendations. So the first four rules that you are seeing in here are things which you need to follow strictly. The camel case is kind of a best practice that is followed in Java. So what are the rules related to naming a variable? Thing is, whenever you name a variable, it can only have a combination of letters, numbers. So you can have all the alphabets, you can have numbers from 0 to 9, and you can have a dollar and an underscore sign. So these are the valid characters that you can use to name a variable. So if I say int test minus test, that's not a legal variable because hyphen usually stands for minus. So you cannot use hyphen in a variable name. The only legal characters are letters, numbers, dollar, and underscore. A variable name cannot start with a number. So if I say int to test, it says error. So you cannot have a variable name starting with a number. And the other thing is a variable name cannot be a keyword. If you look at int is one of the keywords because that represents a integer data type. So you cannot call a value as int. You would get an error. So int is not a valid variable name. There are a lot of other keywords, Java keywords that we would be talking about a little later. You cannot use these keywords as variable names. There is no limit on the length of the identifier. That's basically the name of the variable. Typically in Java, we use the convention of using a camel case. So if I'm saying number of goals, so this is how we would do it. So each word number of goals. Every word starts with a capital letter except for the first one. So the first one we would start always with a lower case. So here number n starts with a lowercase, and after that all the other words start with uppercase. In Java, all the variable names follow this convention. You can actually create variables with a capital letter starting. However, that's not considered to be a good practice. Java compiler will not complain about it, but it's not really considered to be a good practice. In Java, all variable names would start with a small letter. That's the convention which is followed by almost every Java developer. The last but the most important thing about naming variables is it should represent what kind of values it contains. If you are using a variable to track the score, it's better to create it as int score rather than saying int s, because s is not really clear. You don't S can stand for anything, but when I say int score, then I know exactly what the variable is trying to represent. When you are starting off, try and create variables which have good names. Creating variables with good names is one of the important parts of developing great programs. It makes it easy for you as well as people who maintain the code afterwards. So try and give your variables a good name and have that habit over the programming career. In this video, we looked at all the rules related to naming a variable. Until the next video, bye bye. Welcome back. In this video, we would look at the different types of variables which are present in Java. We would start with looking at primitive data types. Until now, we had been using int. So int stands for integer. It is used to store integer numbers. Actually, for storing integer number types, there are 4 different data types in Java. They are byte, short. We have already looked at int, so int and long. Byte, short, int and long. These are the 4 different integer data types that are supported by Java. Byte is 8 bits, that's basically 1 byte, and this is 16 bits, this is 32 bits, and this is 64 bits. So a byte is basically 8 bits, short is 16, int is 32, and long is 64 bits. While choosing the variable type, it's very important to consider the range of the variable into the equation. Right? So if I'm trying to write a program where I'm going to store the number of goals scored in a football match, then most probably 99.999% of the scenario, bytes might be sufficient. But if you really want to be safe, then you would go for a short, because byte can hold only up to 127. With short, you get a much bigger range. So you get a range from 32,768 negative to 32,767 positive, because short uses a little bit more memory. Byte uses only 1 byte, short uses 2 bytes, and int uses 4 bytes. So if you look at the range of integer, it's about minus 2 billion to 2 billion. So if you would want to actually measure, let's say, the GDP of an economy, which might be in trillions, then int might not be the right data type to use. In that case, you might want to use a long. So one of the important things is when you are choosing the type of the variable, you need to consider what is the range of that specific variable. The next types of variables are floating point numbers, basically your numbers which have decimal values. So for example, float f is equal to 4.0 f. So now this has a value of 4.0. You can have a value of 4.5 as well. Float f2 is equal to 4.5. The other floating point variable type is double. So you can say double is equal to 4.5. You can see that I'm using an f when I'm using a floating point value, and I'm not using an f when I'm using a double value, because a literal floating point literal by default. So 4.5 is a constant value, right? So that's a literal. So a floating point constant value is by default a double. That's the reason why when I'm assigning a value, if I try and assign a float f3 is equal to, let's say, 4.5, this would fail because 4.5 is a double value. You cannot take a double value and put it into a float. Why? Because float is 32 bits, whereas double 64 bits. You cannot take a bigger value and put it into a smaller variable. So if the value is big and the variable is small, then Java would throw a compilation error. So float f3 is equal to 4.5 would cause a problem. One interesting thing to note about float and double is both of them are not really accurate. So if you are going to do financial calculations, then probably you should not use them and you would need to go for something called big decimal, which we will talk about a little later. The other two data types which are present in Java are char and boolean. So what we looked at until now are integer data types, floating point data types. This is character data type. So basically, sometimes in programs you would want to store characters. So char, let's say I want to store a character a in ch. This is not the way you need to do that. The way you need to do that is to use single quotes. So char ch is equal to a in single quotes. By character we mean only one letter. So if you try and do AB, that will not be working. So a character can be stored into a char variable type. The last type of variable is boolean. So boolean can store true or false variable. So if I want to find out if a number is prime, so is prime is equal to true, or I can say boolean is prime is equal to false. So boolean is a value which can contain either true or false. So this boolean data type variables can only have two values, true and false. True is called a boolean literal, false is called a boolean literal as well. So if I try to change the case of it, that would be an error. So it's actually false with a small f, and it's case sensitive. So everything in false is small, and same is the case with true. So you cannot say capital T, it should be always small t. This is how you would actually define a boolean literal. So in this video, what we wanted to try to do was to get a quick overview of the different variable types. We looked at the four integer data types, we looked at the two floating point data types, we looked at the character data type and the boolean data type. We would look at the floating point data types, the character data types and the boolean data types in depth a little later in this course. For now, it is very important that you understand them and have a high level big picture of them. When we are talking about them in detail, we would give you a in-depth picture of it. Until the next video, bye-bye. Welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about different variable types, their size in memory, and also the range of values they can store. This kind of information can get a little boring because there are a lot of numbers and some of them are really huge. So you can see here, oh, I don't even know how to call this number. So this is 2 billion. What is this? Okay, go figure out. I'm not going to try that. One of the interesting aspect about the variable types is whenever you are creating a variable, you need to choose an appropriate variable type to store it. So for example, let's say I would want to store number of goals. So I would want to store the number of goals in a football match. What should I use? Should I use a byte or a short or a int or a long? The first thing is it's a number, right? It can only be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would need to use an integer data type, right? So I don't need to go for a floating point data type. So that's the first choice. So I should use one among these. And the best choice among them might be either byte or short. Unless world's number one team playing a team maybe formed by people like me, I don't think there will be more than 127 goals in a football match. So byte should be sufficient, but if you want to be really safe, you can declare it as a short. So if you would want to store the number of goals in a football match, you can say short number of goals. That should be good enough variable to store the number of goals, and you can store the goals as they are scored. So if there's a new goal which is scored, all that you need to do is say number of goals plus plus, and if I now print the number of goals, it's 1. So that's cool. Number of goals now becomes 2. You can actually try and create 2 variables for each of the teams. So you can actually create short number of goals for team 1, number of goals for team 2, or you can give team 1 goals, team 2 goals, a shorter name. Let's say you would want to store the population of the world in a variable. What would you choose? First thing is it's a integer number. So you would choose one among these 4. The population of the world, do you want to go Google and find out how much it is? It's around 6 billion to 7 billion. Would integer be sufficient? Nope, because it's 2 billion. So for storing population of the world, I would need to go for at least a long variable. So I would need to say long population of the world. Let's say I am trying to calculate the average of a few numbers. The average of the few numbers might have decimal points. Choosing between float and double would depend on the precision you would need, how accurately do you need to calculate it. We will talk about it a lot when we talk about financial calculations a little later, but one of the most important things is double and float, both of them are not really precise. If you want really precise calculations, for example, for financial calculations and things like that, you have to go for something called big decimal. But among float and double, double is more precise than float. So typically, I would prefer to go with double for all floating point operations. So if I want to do any decimal kind of operations, I would use double. So I'll say double average. Let's say I would want to store the grades of students, and the grades of the students are A, B, C, D. What would I choose? In that kind of situation, I would go for a char. So I can say char ch is equal to A. Is this the way? No, you need to put it within single quotes. So char ch is equal to A. If you want to change it, ch is equal to B. And because we want to actually store the grades in there, I would want to name it more appropriately. You can say char grade is equal to C. Aha, I don't want to give him a C grade. Let's change the grade to A. A. So grade is equal to A. Now the next variable what I would want to store is whether a number is even or not. What data type should I use? What are the possible values? Is number even? The values are possible are only 2 values, right? Either it's true or false. These kind of values are called Boolean values. So we would use Boolean. So the way we would name it is even. By default, it has a value of false. If you would want to change the value to true, then you can say is even is equal to true. That's it. One example we already talked about was is prime. Is a number prime? Is it raining today? Are you enjoying the course? Yes or no answer. So in all these kind of situations, you would actually use a Boolean. I hope it's not false. I would rather have the value assigned to true. Cool. In this short video, what we wanted to do was to discuss the different situations and what kind of variables you would choose to represent the variables in those kind of situations. Until the next video, bye bye. Welcome back. In this video, we would want to introduce you to how strings and string concatenation works in depth. As we discussed earlier, anything within a double quotes is considered to be a string, right? So this is creating a string variable. If you do $8, it would print test. When I do 1 plus 2, what would be the output? It's 3, right? But when I put 1 in a string and do a plus 2, the output is not 3. The output is a string 12. The fact that it's a string is highlighted by double quotes around the value that is being printed. So when I concatenate 1 to 2, the output is 1, 2. So the plus actually plays double role. When you are putting plus around integers, numbers, then it's doing addition. When you put a plus and one of the operations which is involved is a string, it does concatenation. So if I do 1 plus 2 plus 3, what do you think will happen? It would do addition, 6. However, if I do 1 plus 2 plus 3, what would be the output? 1, 2, 3. Operations are always executed from left to right. So 1 plus 2 plus 3. If you want to do 2 plus 3 as addition, then you can do this. So what happens is first 2 plus 3 is getting executed, 5, and 1 plus 5 is appended together. Not just with numbers, plus also can be used with strings containing alphabet. So you can say plus ABC plus DEF. It concatenates both of them together. You can also concatenate multiple strings as well. Cool, right? You can also use the concatenation operator in system.out.println. So you can say system.out.println ABC plus DEF plus FHI. Or if you have an int I with a value of 5, then you can use system.out.println to print the value of 5. You can say value of plus I. What does it print? Well, let's put a space in here. It says value of 5. You can say value of I is and plus I, and you can say value of I is 5. In this quick short tip, what we wanted to show you is the string concatenation operator, how it works, and how you can use it in system.out.println to print the values of a few variables quickly. You should always be careful that you are not doing a lot of string concatenation, as we will learn a little later that string concatenation is a very costly operation. Don't worry about it for now. You'll learn about it when we talk about strings in depth. Until the next tip, bye-bye. Welcome back. We are discussing a wide range of topics related to variables, and in this video we would talk about assignment. Assignment is one of the operations that is little confusing when you are starting off with programming. But once you gain a little bit of understanding of it, it becomes very easy thing to understand. Let's create a couple of variables. Int I, I'll have a value of 10, and int j, I'll have a value of 15. And I would want to do I is equal to j. The important thing to understand with assignment is the fact that this is different from mathematics. When I say I is equal to j, it does not mean both of them are equal. When I say I is equal to j, I am telling the programming language to copy the value of j into I. So for primitive values, the value of j is copied into the memory location which is referred by I. So the value of j is copied into I, and you would see now that the I has a value of 15 and j also has a value of 15. The previous value which was in I is lost. You will not be able to retrieve it again. This is assignment. Assignment is used to copy the value of one variable into another. In an assignment, the value on the left hand side should always be a variable. You cannot say 10 is equal to I. Nope, that would not work, because on the left hand side you should always have a variable. It cannot be a value. On the right hand side you can either have a variable or a value. This is because a variable would have a value as well, right? So when I say I is equal to j, j has a value, and that value would be copied into the variable I. So now I has a value of 15. So that's one very important thing for you to understand about assignment. Assignment involves copying the value of the expression on the right hand side to the variable on the left hand side. On the left hand side it should always be a variable. And assignment can be done with expressions as well. So I is equal to j into 2. What would happen? J into 2. J is 15. 15 into 2, 30. So I gets a value of 30. You can also do things like I is equal to I into 2. So what would happen? The value of I is 30. 30 into 2, 60, and the value would be copied into I. So the value of I is 60. So the new value of I is 60. You can say I is equal to I plus I. So what would the value of I become? 120. Value of I plus value of I. 60 plus 60, which is 120. You can say I is equal to I minus I. I minus I. What would be the value? 0. So I is equal to I minus I. So the expression is evaluated and the value is copied into the variable on the left hand side. One of the most popular operations which we do in programming is I is equal to I plus 1. So we are trying to increment the value of I by 1. So I has a value of 0. I'm doing I is equal to I plus 1. What would happen? I will have a value of 1 because I, before executing the statement, I had a value of 0. 0 plus 1, 1. 1 is evaluated and the value is copied into the memory location which is referred to by I. This is how you can increment variables. And the way you can decrement is I is equal to I minus 1, I is equal to I minus 1, I minus 1. So this is how you would decrement the variables. This is called decrementing and the previous one is called incrementing. The idea behind the video was to introduce you to the different things around the assignment operator. In the next video, we will look at a few puzzles related to the assignment operator. Until then, bye-bye. In the previous video, we looked at the basics of assignment operator. In this video, we will take it to the next level and see a few puzzles around it. So let's say I have an int number and I have a value of 5. We saw that if I do a number is equal to number plus 1, what would be the value of number after that? It would have a value of 6. It gets incremented. 5 plus 1 is copied into this. So number has a value of 6. There is a shortcut way to do this as well. So it's called number plus plus. So it increments the value of number. Number has a value of 7. If I do number plus plus again, number has a value of 8. There is another operator to decrement as well. It's number minus minus. This would decrease the value. So if you look at the value of number, it's 7. Let's create the variable again. So number is equal to 5 and we looked at number plus plus. Similar to number plus plus to increment, there is a plus plus number as well. So plus plus number and number plus plus, both of them would increment the variable. There is a minor difference between them which we'll discuss later. But for now, you can almost kind of think of them as number is equal to number plus 1. So number plus plus and plus plus number are both used to increment numbers, and minus minus number or number minus minus are both used to decrement a number. There are other operators called compound assignment operators. The compound assignment operators help you to simplify your code. So if I am doing I is equal to I plus 2, let's say, instead of that I can say I plus is equal to 2. If I am using the same variable on both sides, then I can do I plus is equal to 2 or I minus is equal to 1 or I star is equal to 5. 4 into 5, 20. If you print the value of I, it's 20. Or you can say I divided by 4. I is equal to I divided by 4. I is equal to I mod 2. Modulus, as we discussed before, 5 mod 2, the remainder when 5 is divided by 2, which is 1. So I becomes 1. So these are all the compound assignment operators. In the last few videos, we tried to understand variables in depth. We tried to understand how variables are stored in memory, what are the different types of variables you can declare, and also we looked at the basic assignment operator as well as the compound assignment operators along with the shortcut increment operators plus plus and minus minus. In the next step, let's continue attacking the challenge at hand. We would want to print the 5 multiplication table, and in the next step we would take a few more steps towards the solution. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In 28 minutes, We teach a wide variety of courses, web services, RESTful APIs, microservices, and a lot of Java frameworks like Spring and Spring Boot. One of the frequently asked questions is, why don't you really have a Java course? I mean, this was before 2018. Why didn't I have a Java course before 2018? And the answer to that is what you see in the screen right now, Jshell. Before Jshell, if you had to write a Java program, I mean, let's imagine you are writing your first Java program, right? So you'd want to actually try and play with it and try and have fun. But what you'd need to typically do when you're writing your first Java program before Jshell is you need to create a class, you need to create a method, then write the code in there. But with Jshell, all that you need to do is type in the command. So let's say I would want to execute system.out.println. All that I need to do is type this in and press enter. That's it. You are now able to understand how the system.out.println works. That's immediate feedback, and that's one of the reasons why I love Jshell. One of the most important things with anything we do is we would like to have immediate feedback. So if I'm executing a wrong statement, then I would want to know it immediately, and especially at the beginning stages of programming where you make a lot of mistakes, it's better to get the feedback even faster. I love Jshell and I hope you are also having a good experience with it. In this video, we will discuss a few tips to make Jshell even more awesome. One of the important tips is that Jshell supports history. You can use the up arrow and the down arrow to navigate through all the commands that you have executed previously. So you can use the up arrow, down arrow and look through all the commands that you have executed previously. The other useful shortcut is Control A. It takes you to the start of the line. So hold the Control key and press the A alphabet. So Control A takes you to the start of the line and Control E takes you to the end of the line. So if I have to change something at the start of the line, then I would press Control A, go ahead and make the modification. Let's say I want to delete all the spaces here. So I can do that and press enter. If you want to search through all the commands that you have executed already, you can try using Control R. So just press Control R and type in what you want to search. So system, let's say system. And then you'd see all the first matching result. If you'd want to see other results, you can actually try and do a Control R again. So Control R, it takes you through all the system things that you have executed, and let's say now I would want to execute this. I have found the right one. I just need to press enter. It executes that. So it's very simple. Just type in Control R, Control followed by R, and then type in what you want to search. So system, and you can loop through all the system commands by, oops, I made a mistake. Control R, you type in what you want to search, system for example, and then you can actually press Control R again. Control R. You can loop through every statement having system that you executed earlier, and you would be able to find the one which you would want to execute. So if I want to press number 2 now, so I just press enter, it would take that. Now that we looked at a couple of important shortcuts related to Jshell, we are ready to look at a few other tips. The thing is, Jshell, if you don't type in a complete statement, so I is equal to is not a complete statement, right? So if you don't type in a complete statement, it would ask a multi-line. So it would go to the next line and ask you to type something, and that's what is this. So in the previous videos, you would have seen this happening a few times. This is Jshell asking, okay, you have not typed in the complete statement, go ahead, type in the complete statement. So I'm saying 6. Now I is equal to 6 is a complete statement. So it's able to accept things even on multiple lines. Jshell also allows 2 statements on the same line. So I is equal to 6, j is equal to 6. So you need to separate them by semicolon, and then you can execute 2 statements on the same line. One of the important things with Jshell is you don't really need to end a line with semicolon, right? So until now we were just typing in I is equal to 6. Typically in programming, you need to end every statement, at least in Java programming, you need to end every statement with a semicolon. But in Jshell, it gives you an exception. It says, okay, I know you are lazy, so just type in I is equal to 6 and I am fine. Don't worry about the semicolon when you're executing a statement. When you type in multiple statements, you definitely need a semicolon to separate them. So if you type in something like I is equal to 6, j is equal to 6, Jshell will not be able to understand it. So you need to put a semicolon here to separate them out. One important thing about Jshell is if you do a exit and come back. So let's say I'm doing an exit now and I'm logging back into the Jshell, you'd see that all the uh, variables are lost. For example, I is equal to 6. It would say, I don't know what I is, because you would have created I in the previous session and this session does not know anything about I. If you are exiting a statement and you see something of this kind, then just go ahead and directly declare the variable then and there. The other thing with Jshell is if I type in an expression, so we typed in a lot of expressions earlier, right? So 3 into 4, it's 12, and you can see a $2 which is present in here, right? So at the start of this course, I said, okay, don't worry about it. But now you're ready to understand what's happening in the background with this. What is happening in here is when you type in an expression. So when you type in an expression, what happens is Jshell would create a variable with the value of that expression. So what's happening is Jshell is actually creating a variable with the name $2. So if you type in $2 now, it would print the value of 12. Whatever expression you are creating, it would be assigned to a variable and stored so that you can actually use and refer to it a little later. You can see that it's very simple, similar to this, right? So int I is equal to 6, I is assigned a value of 6. That's what this says. And similar to that, when I say 3 into 4, 12, what it's saying is $2 is created with a value of 12. That's one thing you can actually try and play around and try and understand it, because this is now cool because I can use $2 now in expressions as well. So I can say $2 into 3. So it's $2 is 12, 12 into 3, 36, and it's creating another variable also. So $4 is the new one. Okay, there you go. That's some of the fun stuff with Jshell. All the things which we are doing in this video would be really helpful in the course going forward. So try and play around with them, try and get comfortable with Jshell, and I'm sure you'd start loving Jshell just like I do. Welcome back. From the time we started attacking the multiplication table challenge, we have made a lot of progress. We know how to calculate 5 into 5. We know how to print 5 into 5 is equal to 25 now. And the last thing that is left out is how to do this 10 times. The expression that we have right now is this, right? So system.out.println percentage d into percentage d is equal to percentage d, and this gets replaced in here. So 5 gets here, I gets replaced in here, 5 into I gets replaced here. If we press this, based on the current value of I, a number is printed. So 5 into 5 is equal to 25. If you had quit Jshell and come back, then make sure that you are declaring the variable I again. So let's say int I is equal to 6. You can now print 5 into 6 is equal to 30. You can say I is equal to 7 and print 5 into 7 is equal to 35. That's where we are. What we would want to do now is we would want to print this 10 times. Typically in programming languages, we use a loop to do this. So what we want to do is something of this kind, right? So for I is equal to 1 to 10, do this statement. For a value of I from 1 to 10, execute this statement so that all multiples of 5 from 1 to 10 are printed to the output. Unfortunately, in Java, the syntax for is not this simple. In Java, the for loop syntax looks something of this kind. So if I want to repeat this statement 10 times, then I would need to do something called initialization. I would then need to check a condition, and then I would need to define an update statement, and after that is when I can execute this statement. One of the important parts of the for loop is something called a condition. A condition can either be true or false. If the condition is true, the for loop continues execution. If the condition is false, the for loop stops execution. That's the reason why before we go in depth into the for loop, what we would try and understand are the basic conditions. We would understand a little bit of conditional execution with if statement, and after that we would come back to trying to solve the for loop. Now, what is a condition? Let's say I has a value of 10, right? Now, if I say I less than 5, so is I less than 5? I has a value of 10. Is I less than 5? The answer is false. This is called a condition. Is I greater than 5? Yes, it is true. The other conditional operators which are present are I less than equal to 5. Is I less than equal to 5? I has a value of 10. 10 less than equal to 5 is false. Is I less than equal to 10? True, because it is equal to 10. Similarly, there is a I greater than equal to 10 as well. So is I greater than equal to 10? Is it greater or equal? Yes, it has a value of 10, so it's greater than equal to 10, it returns a value true. Try and define a couple more variables and try and see what would be the output for different conditions around this. The important thing to understand is that a condition returns a Boolean value. So a condition always returns a Boolean value. Once you have a condition defined, you can even control execution of a program using that condition. What does that mean? Let's say I would want to do a simple system.out.println, and it says I is less than 5. So it's printing I is less than 5. What is the current value of I? I is equal to 10, but it's printing I is equal to less than 5. I would want to say this statement should be executed only if I is less than 5. So only if I is less than 5, I would want to print this statement. How do I do that? I would need to use something called if. The syntax for if is very simple. If followed by condition, followed by statement. The statement you would want to execute is down here. If condition followed by statement. Don't worry, this would give you an error because we are not really defining anything called a statement and there is nothing called condition defined. But it's basically if in between the brackets you would write the condition and then you would write the statement that you would want to execute. The great thing about Jshell is as soon as I type in if open bracket condition close bracket, it is asking me for an additional line of code because it knows that the if statement is not complete, if condition is not complete without this statement. So it's asking for this statement before it would execute it. So for example, I can say if I less than 5, then system.out.println I is less than 5. You'd see that nothing is printed out. Why is nothing printed? Because I value is 10. If I is less than 5, is I less than 5? Is 10 less than 5? Nope, that's why it is not printed. Let's change the value of I. Let's say I value is 4 and let's execute the same statement again. So if I less than 5, print this. Now you would see that this is printed. This is called conditional execution. That's the magic of the if statement. With the if statement, you can execute this line of code only when this condition is true. If this condition is false, this line will not be executed at all. Let's consider another example. So let's say there are two numbers. Number 1 is 5 and int number 2 is 7. So number 1 has a value of 5, number 2 has a value of 7. If number 2 greater than number 1, system.out.println number 2 is greater than number 1. What would be the result? Think about it. Is number 2 greater than number 1? Yep, number 2 is greater than number 1. It's printed out here. So if I change the value of number 2 to 3 and execute the same thing, what would happen? Think about it, what would happen? Nothing is printed. So nothing is printed out to the console because number 2 is not greater than number 1. So this condition is false. If this condition is false, this statement is not executed. In this video, we were introduced to the if condition. So we discussed what is a condition and we also looked at what is a if statement. We saw that code or the statement under the if condition is executed only when the condition is true. In the next video, let's look at some of the exercises related to if and also look at a few puzzles. Welcome back. In this video, let's look at all the exercises related to the if statement. The first exercise is create four variables A, B, and C and D. Assign a few values to them and also create an if statement to print if A plus B is greater than C plus D. So create four variables and create an if statement to print if A plus B is greater than C plus D. That's exercise number one. Exercise number two is have the three angles of a triangle stored in three variables. Angle 1, angle 2, angle 3. For now assume that they are all integers. So angle 1 is an integer, angle 2 is an integer, angle 3 is an integer. So have all the three angles of a triangle stored in these variables and then decide if these three angles would form a legal triangle. I am not a great mathematician, but this is what we learn in basic geometry. Angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 is 180 degrees. The sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. That's how you would find if a triangle is valid or not. So if the angles are right or not. So create an if statement to state if the three angles can form a triangle. The third exercise is to have a variable called number and create an if statement to find if it is an even number. Now, how do you find out if it's an even number? There's a hint down here. So I said modulus percentage operator. So think about it, try and solve these exercises. One of the most important things is from now on, the exercises become even more important because we are getting into if statement. Next, we would go into for loop. The exercises become more important and also a lot more fun. So I would recommend you to spend some time to solve these exercises and I'll see you in the next video where we would solve them together. Until the next video, bye bye. Welcome back. I hope you had fun solving these exercises and let's quickly look at the solutions for each one of them. So have four variables A, B, C, D and create an if statement to print if A S B is greater than C plus D, right? So let's create a variables. Int A is equal to 1, int B is equal to 2, int C is equal to 3 and int D is equal to 1. Now what we want to print is A plus B greater than C plus D. So if A plus B greater than C plus D, is that right? A plus B is greater than C plus D. System dot out dot println A plus B is greater than C plus D. Aha, it's not getting printed. That means 1 plus 2, 3 is not greater than 3 plus 1. That's why it's not getting printed. Let's change the value of A. I'll make it A is equal to 6. Now, same statements again. Up arrow. If A plus B is greater than C plus D, system.out.println A plus B is greater than C plus D. That's cool, right? So this is working fine. One of the things is it's better to format it well. So in real world programs, you'd want to leave the conditions like this. So this is much more easier to read. And also you'd want to leave a tab at the start. So here in Jshell, you would not be able to put a tab. So I'm using spaces to format it. So this clearly shows that the if condition is true, then this gets executed. And in the current scenario with the values of the variables, it is true because A has a value of 6 and B has a value of, what is it, 2. So 6 plus 2, 8 is greater than 3 plus 1, 4. So that's cool. So that's why it's getting printed. Let's move on to the next exercise. Have three angles of a triangle stored in three variables. So let's create angle 1 is equal to 20 int angle 2 is equal to 60 int angle 3 is equal to 50. How do I check if it's a valid triangle? Angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 is equal to, I'm using a single is equal to, be careful about it, is equal to 180. Then system.out.println valid triangle. Nope, it's erroring out. It's saying error, unexpected type, required variable, found value. What is happening in here? Why is it failing? One of the important things is if you want to compare angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 is equal to 180, you need to use the comparison operator. Here we are trying to use the assignment operator. What the assignment operator does, it tries to take the 180 and put it to here, but on the left hand side there is no variable. What we have is a value, angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3. So it's saying I cannot take 180 and assign it to a value. We need to use the comparison operator. What is the comparison operator? It is double is equal to. So is equal to is equal to. Remember this always. It's double is equal to. So if you want to compare if a value is equal, if two values are equal, then you need to use is equal to is equal to. And now I can print valid triangle. Let's format it better. Now it's not printing it out because angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3, 20, 60, 80, 80 plus 50, 130. It's not 180. So how do I get it to 180? Let's increase angle 3 by 50. So plus is equal to 50. What's the value of angle 3 now? Angle 3, so it's 100. So angle 1, 20. Angle 2 is now 60. So let's execute the statement again. Now it prints it's a valid triangle. That's cool, right? That's the exercise number 2. The last one is to find out if a number is even. Now let's have a number, int number is equal to 10. Now how do I find out if a number is even? The hint which was given is a modulus operator. What would happen when I do a number mod 2? If it's an even number, what would be the remainder? If it's 10, let's say 10 is an even number, right? So if 10 is the even number, number mod 2 would return 0. The same thing if I do with an odd number. So if I say 9 mod 2, it would return a 1 remainder. So if I do it with an even number mod 2, it returns 0. Otherwise it returns 1. So you can think of the logic. You can go ahead and try it. If you have not already done it now, pause the video and try it. I would go ahead and code the solution now. So if number mod 2, is it single is equal to or double is equal to? Think about it. Is it single is equal to or double is equal to? It's double is equal to. If number mod 2 is equal to 0, I press the tab, and that's the reason why it came up. You don't need to worry about it. So just type in system.out.println number is even. Cool. Now you see number is even. Let's write it again. If number mod 2 is equal to 0, system.out.println number is even. So it's printing number is even. If number has an odd number, number is equal to 9, what happens? It doesn't print it. These are all the exercises that are related to if statement. We solved 3 exercises. In the next video, we'll look at a few puzzles related to the if condition. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. In this video, let's look at a few puzzles related to conditions and if condition as well. Let's declare a variable int I is equal to 5. So we already look at it. I greater than 5 is false because it's not greater than 5. Now, what would be the result of this? I is equal to 5. The value of 5 gets assigned to I, right? If I say I is equal to 5, what would be the result of it? Think about it. Pause the video. Think about I is equal to 5. What would be the result of it? It returns true. Is equal to operator is an assignment. So the value of 5 gets copied to I. Is equal to operator, double is equal to operator is a comparison operator. So the value of 5 gets compared with the value of I. Now the value of I is equal to 5, so it returns a value 5. Sorry, it returns a value true. On the other hand, if I had a value of 6, I is equal to 6, it would return false because I has a value 5. 5 is not equal to 6. Now let's consider another example. So let's say if I is equal to 5, I would want to say I is odd, and also I would want to say I is prime. So I would want to print two statements. Let's, if I press enter here and say system.out.println and say I is odd and press enter, that's the only statement which gets executed. Now I would want two statements to get executed if I is equal to 5. Can I do something of this kind? System.out.println I is odd and type it in the same thing. System.out.println I is I is prime. So what I'm doing is if I is equal to 5, system.out.println I is odd. Because we would want to type in another statement, I'm having a semicolon here. So one of the important things is typically in programming languages, semicolon is used to end a statement. However, in Jshell, you don't really need a semicolon. But when we switch to writing Java programs, you would see that we would use semicolons to end statements. And over here, I would want to type two statements on the same line. So I'm using semicolon to separate them out. Now let's see what would happen. It's printing I is odd and I is prime. Let's change the value of I to 6. Oops, I used comparison. I would want to do assignment. So I is equal to 6. So now I has a value of 6. Now I execute the same statement again. I is equal to 5 and let's print it. So I now has a value of 6, but this condition is getting executed. So it's saying I is prime. Why is it so? So if I is equal to 5, I is odd and I is prime, but I right now has a value of 6. Why is this statement getting executed? Think about it. One of the most important things that you need to understand is a if statement. The if condition can have only one statement under it. So this statement is the only one which is under the if statement. This one is not falling under the if statement. That's why it gets executed. So if I is equal to 5 is used to check only for this statement. So if I is equal to 5 is false, what happens? This statement is skipped, but this statement is executed. That's what we are saying. I is prime is printed. Even though I does not have a value of 5, this statement gets executed. Now, if I want to have both these statements under the if condition, so I would want both these statements to be printed only if this condition is true. How do I do that? The way I can do that is by using something called a block. In programming, blocks are started with an open brace, and now I can type in multiple statements in here. So let's take the system.out.println I is odd. That's what I'm typing in right now, and you can see that now it's accepting more statements. So now I can say system.out.println I is prime and end it. Now you would see that nothing is printed because I have a value of 6. None of these statements are executed. In an ideal world, actually I would want to give spaces and make sure that this is tabbed out a little bit so that it's very clear that these two statements are inside the block. So typically in programming languages, a block starts with an open brace and ends with a close brace. And if you would want to group a set of statements under the same condition, we would use blocks. So this is a if block, and all this code under the if block is executed only if the condition is true. One of the recommendations for you is always use blocks. So even if you have to execute only one statement, I would recommend to use blocks because it would make it very clear to programmers who come after you. So even if I'm going to have only one statement in the if like this, even then I would actually love to put it in a block. just because at a later point in time somebody might come in and add another line of code below it without having a problem. If I have something like this, if somebody comes and adds another line of code beneath it, assuming it's under the if, it would cause a problem. Okay, there you go. Those are some of the important things that you need to understand about the if statement. Until the next video, bye bye. Welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about the if statement. Actually, there are a lot of wonderful stuff around the if statement, like if else, nested if else, and also combining conditions using logical operators. We'll talk about all of them later. For now, let's focus on the problem at hand. We would want to solve the multiplication table problem, and we discussed about the syntax of the for loop, right? So we said the syntax of the for loop is for you have to have an initialization in here, you can have a condition in here, and you can do an update in here. And in here I can put the system.out.printf statement. So now we need to decide what should be in the initialization, what should be in the condition, and what should be in the update. What do we want to do? We would want to execute the loop from I is equal to 1 to 10. So we would want to execute the statement from I is equal to 1 to I is equal to 10. So we would want to print it from I is equal to 1, I is equal to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In a nutshell, we would want to start with I is equal to 1, then print this, and after that we would want to increment I, right? So I would want to say I is equal to I plus 1, and then again print the same thing, then again execute this and do this. Until when should we do it? Until I has a value of 10. When I has a value of 10, we would want to stop executing this, so that we would have 5 into 1 is equal to 5, 5 into 2 is equal to 10, and so on, printed up to 5 into 10 is equal to 50. So just to repeat, so we would want to initialize the value of I to 1 and then keep incrementing the value of I. So we would want to keep incrementing the value of I until when? Until the condition I is less than or equal to 10. So until less than or equal to 10, we would want to continue executing this statement. So for the initialization, the initial value of I we would want to give is I is equal to 1, right? So we would want to start with I is equal to 1. So that's what we have put it in here. So int I is equal to 1. If you have not declared I yet, you can actually go ahead and declare it in here as well. So int I is equal to 1, or you can go ahead here and say int I. You can just declare it in here. So I is equal to 1 followed by a semicolon. The condition we would want to check is I less than or equal to 10. So until I less than or equal to 10, we would want to execute the loop. And what is the update that you would want to do? The update that I would want to do is I is equal to I plus 1. So each time increment I is equal to I plus 1. You can actually write I plus plus. And inside this, I would use a block. Using a block is a good practice. So even though there is only going to be one statement under the for loop, I would open brace and close brace, and between that I would type in the statement. One of the things you can do is open up a text editor like a notepad or something to type this in, so that you can easily copy and paste it down. Now the statement we would want to execute, we already have that, right? So this is the statement that we would want to execute. Cool. So this is what we would want to do. For I is equal to 1, until I is less than 10, keep incrementing I and execute this statement. Let's see what would happen. Let's type it in here. For I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, there should not be a space in here, and open brace. I would want to do this. Because this is under the for loop, I would try and give a little bit of space. It does not really matter for now. And close brace. Let's see what would happen. It says semicolon expected. That's because I have not ended this statement with a semicolon. So inside a for loop, you need to use a semicolon to terminate this statement in a block. So let's go ahead and put a semicolon and now execute it. Now you can see the 5 table being printed. So all that we had to do was do a simple thing. For I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, do this whole thing. If you did not get the output or there was a problem, then check the syntax again. So it's basically for open bracket I is equal to 1, this is the initialization, this is the condition check, this is the increment or the update operation. So you can see that each one of these is separated by a semicolon. So initialization, semicolon, condition, semicolon, increment, followed by a bracket, followed by an open brace, and inside that is the statement followed by a semicolon and followed by a close brace. So make sure that you have the case right. So make sure that system.out.printf and the println are in the exact case are there in here, and you should not really have a problem, and you should see the output being printed out in here. Isn't this cool? These 3 lines of code is all that is causing this multiplication table to be printed. Now let's take a step back and look at what happens with the for loop. The way for loop is executed is this statement which is present in here, I is equal to 1. This gets executed only once. That's when the for loop starts executing. So when for loop starts executing, I has a value of 1. I is initialized with a value of 1. And immediately thereafter, the condition gets executed. So I has a value of 1. It would check if I less than equal to 10. So 1 is less than equal to 10. That's cool. And then the statement gets executed. So that's why we would see 5 into 1 is equal to 5. And once this statement gets executed, what is executed? After that, every time the update gets executed. So the first time, only the first time initialization gets executed, and after that, every time update gets executed. So if the loop is executed 10 times, then the initialization is executed once and the update is executed 9 times. However, the important thing to remember is the condition is executed always. Whether you do the initialization or the update, after the initialization or the update, the condition is checked, and only if the condition is checked, this statement is executed. So I has a value of 1 less than equal to 10, executed. I gets incremented, I has a value of 2 less than equal to 10, yes. 3, yes. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When the value of I is 9, I plus plus gets executed, I becomes 10, I less than equal to 10 is true. So system.out.printf, this gets executed and we see the output 5 into 10 is equal to 50. Once the statement is printed, I gets incremented again. Now I would have a value of 11 because from 10 it becomes 11, and check the condition check gets executed. I less than equal to 10, is that true? Nope. I less than equal to 2 is not true because I has a value of 11, and that's when we quit the loop and go out. If this sounds a little confusing, don't worry about it at all. We will write a number of for loops in the exercises as well as in the puzzles, and make sure that you understand the for loop very well. Congratulations on getting the output that we wanted, but there are things which are still bad in this program. There are things that can still be improved in the program that we wrote. So let's focus on that and learn a lot more in the subsequent videos. Until then, bye-bye. Welcome back. Congratulations on successfully executing a for loop. If this is the first for loop you have executed in your life, this is a major step for you. I'm so happy. Now, let's shift our attention. Let's play even more with for loop with a few exercises. The first exercise we would recommend you to do is to do the whole thing again with 7 table. One of the important things is getting started with programming is a little tough. So there might be few things which you did not understand properly or things like that. I think if you do a second revision through the whole thing, you would learn even more. So if you have little bit of time, do the whole thing, but instead of the 5 table, try and do the 7 table. And also kill Jshell, kill everything and start off again fresh and give it a try. Good luck with that. The second exercise is to print 6 table and the 10 tables. Until now we have been printing the 5 table. So try and print the 6 table and the 10 tables. Third exercise is to print numbers from 1 to 10. Fourth one is to print numbers from 10 to 1. Fifth one is to print squares of first 10 numbers. By square I mean number multiplied by itself. So 5 square is 25. 5 into 5 is 25. And print squares of first 10 even numbers and print squares of the first 10 odd numbers. So good luck with all these exercises and I'll see you in the next video after you complete the exercises. Until then, bye bye. Welcome back. Let's look at the exercises we talked about in the previous video. So the 7 table one, I will really leave it as an exercise. I don't really want to do the whole thing again. So go ahead and do it by yourself. Now print 6 and 10 tables. Let's start with that, right? So we were printing the 5 table until now. So if you want to print the 6 table, all that you need to do is change 6 to 5. Sorry, change 5 to 6. That's it. There's your 6 table, and now let's go for the 7 table as well. Now, is that cool? So now I can see I can print 6 table and 7 table, right? You can make it even cooler, right? If I actually define a variable called table, so table is equal to 7, and let's now use that in the for loop. So for I is equal to 1 to 10, instead of 7, I would say table. And close brace. It's printing the 7 table now. Let's change it. Table is equal to 8 and it prints the 8 table as well. So the same code right now. So previously when we had to change the table, I had to change this from 8 to 7 or 6, whichever table I would want to do it. Now I don't need to. So I can say table is equal to 8 and that's it. I'm ready to execute for the 8 table, or if you would want to do the 9 table, then table is equal to 9 and execute the same statement again. That's it. It's 9 table again. So we are now controlling the table which is being printed by the table variable. That's cool, right? So that's what programming is all about. So step by step, make your program more customizable. So that's what we were doing all through the last few steps. We are trying to make our program more and more generic so that it is more and more reusable. What we want to do is to print numbers from 1 to 10. So how do we do that? Whenever we do a for loop, what you need to do is we need to decide the initial condition. What is the initial condition? We would want to start with 1. So for int I is equal to 1, or you can just say I is equal to 1 because I is already defined. The condition is I would want to execute until I has a value of 10. That's cool. And I would keep incrementing it. And as usual, let's go for a open brace and type in. I'll take the same statement from previously and let's modify it. So what we want to print is just the numbers, right? So I would need to print I. So system.out.printf %d comma I.println, and that's it. I have numbers from 1 to 10. I guess this should be an easy one to solve. The next one is much more interesting. So I would want to print it from 10 to 1. How do we do that? Think about it. So what is the initial value? The initial value is I is equal to 10. That's right. So we want to print from 10 to 1. So I is equal to 10. That's cool. Now the interesting thing is what should be the condition that needs to be checked and what should be the update that needs to be performed. What should be those? Because I would want to go from 10 to 1. So when I want to go from 10 to 1, should I increment or should I decrement? The interesting thing is that you should decrement, right? So I would want to decrease at each. So I would want to go from 10 to 9 to so on. So now I would say I, not here. So I would need to put this in the decrement. So I would need to say I is equal to I minus 1, or the shortcut is I minus minus. Now over here, what do I need to check? So until when should I execute the loop? If I say I less than equal to 1, what would happen? When I is 10, let's try this out. System.out.println I. Nothing is printed. Why is nothing printed? Because the initial value of I is 10. The condition is checked, I less than equal to 1. Is 10 less than equal to 1? Nope. That's not right because 10 is greater than 1. So that's not true. So nothing is executed and it comes out. Now, the way actually it should have been done is by I greater than equal to 1. So we want to keep executing the loop until I is greater than or equal to 1. Let's see what would happen with this. Now numbers are printed from 10 to 1. Let's say I would want to print every alternate number in here. So I would want to print 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2 only. How do I do that? Think about it. What is the easiest change I can do to this statement to print from 10 to 1 but only print the alternate numbers? What I can do is instead of I minus minus, I can do I is equal to I minus 2. So decrement by 2 and then what would happen? Awesome. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Actually, you can look, if you change the initialization, the same program would print the odd numbers as well. I would leave you to think about these. So try and think about these and make sure that you understand what is happening in here. So I has a value of 9. Every time it gets decremented by 2 until the value of I is greater than equal to 1. Once I reaches 1, when it's decremented, I is equal to I minus 2, it goes down to minus 1. This condition would be false and it comes out of the loop. And the same thing in here. When I becomes 2, when you do I minus 2, I becomes 2 minus 2, 0. This condition will not be met and you would get out of the loop. Isn't for loop a lot of fun? I love the for loop and I hope you are loving it too. Now next, print squares of the first 10 numbers. So what we want to print is not I but I square. So it's quite an easy thing, right? So we have done much more complex things than that. So let's find the loop. So this was the basic loop, I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10. I use up arrow, down arrow to navigate between them. So instead of I, what we want to print is I star I, right? So we want to print squares. Cool. So 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49. If you're good at mathematics, check if all these values are right. Next one is to print squares of first 10 even numbers. So we would want to print the squares of first 10 even numbers. Let's try it. So instead of, because we would want to print the squares of the even numbers, I can start with 2 and let's say I is equal to I plus 2. Do you think this would work? Think about it. So I'm saying I is equal to 2, I less than equal to 10, I is equal to I plus 2. So this is actually printing the squares of only the first 5 numbers, right? So one way to do it is to say I is equal to 2 to I less than 20 and execute the loop. So now it prints the squares of the first 10 even numbers. Another way you can do that is to continue using the same loop that we used earlier. So I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, and you can do some magic in here. So instead of doing I star I, what you can do is 2 star I, oops, let's start again. Instead of doing I star I, what we can do is 2 into I star 2 into I again. So make sure that you have the brackets aligned. So it's 2 into I star 2 into I. Actually, you don't even need the brackets inside. So you can directly type in 2 into I, 2 star I star 2 star I. What I'm doing is, when I is 1, I'm multiplying it by 2. So 2I into 2I, which would print the squares of the first 10 even numbers. The output, if you'd see, is same as exactly what was before. So try and think about it, try and see what you can learn from it. Print squares of the first 10 odd numbers. So let's start with this. So I'll instead of starting from 2, I can start from 1, and I can keep the condition as it is. Think why I'm leaving the condition as it is. Think about it, and this would print the squares of the first 10 odd numbers. There you go. That's a lot of fun that we had with the for loop. There are a lot of programs that we have done with it very quickly. One of the interesting facts is you can see how Jshell gives you immediate feedback, right? So if you had previous experience with an IDE or writing a Java program outside Jshell, you would know how difficult it was to try different things. Jshell makes it very easy, and that's why we are able to experiment so much in this course until now. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun with the course until now, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this video, let's look at some of the puzzles related to for loop. So let's say I am declaring a variable, right? Int I is equal to 1, and I'm typing something of this kind. So the initialization, I'm leaving it empty. So I'm just putting a semicolon, and I'm trying to run this. What would happen? It says illegal statement, because in a for loop you need to have minimum of 2 semicolons. So this is initialization, and this is the condition, and this is the increment. So let's leave the initialization part empty, and let's say I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, and I'm following it up with a semicolon. What would be the value of I after this? Think about it. So I'm executing this. What will be the value of I now? The value of I is 11. The important thing is, in a for loop, each of these parts, the initialization part, the condition part, and the increment or the update part, can be empty. So they can all be empty. The only things which are mandatory are the 2 semicolons. You definitely need to have 2 semicolons to separate the empty stuff. And the interesting thing that we have done here is we directly put a semicolon after the for loop. When we put a semicolon after the for loop, it's called a empty statement. So basically what the for loop does is it executes the empty statement, which does nothing. So what happens is I starts with 1, the condition gets executed, I less than equal to 10, that's true. So I plus plus will be executed, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, I less than equal to 10, and so on until this condition fails. This condition fails when I is 10 and gets incremented, that's when I becomes 11, and then this condition fails. So the value of I is 11. The next important thing to understand is that you can even have multiple statements in each of these parts. So in the initialization part, I can have I is equal to 1, I'm initializing the value of I, and also I can use other variables in here. So let's create a variable int j and assign it, let's just define it. So int j, and over here what I'll do is int I is equal to 1, j is equal to 2, and over here I can do j plus plus as well. So at the end of the whole thing, I'm just putting a semicolon, so it's an empty. So what do you think will be the values of I and j? So I is 11, it's the same as before, j is 12. Because j starts at 2 and it gets incremented the same number of times as I, it gets a value of 12. You can use a comma and you can include multiple statements in the initialization and multiple statements in the update. The other interesting part is the fact that I less than equal to 10 is the condition, right? So there can only be one condition in here. You can have multiple statements over in the initialization, you can have multiple statements over in the update, but there can be only one condition in the condition. Now the same thing, let's say I'm doing j minus minus. What would be the output? Think about it. I has a value of 11, we didn't change anything. J has a value of minus 8. That's because instead of incrementing, what we are doing is decrementing the value of j. So j gets decremented 10 times, so 2 minus 10 is minus 8. That's the value which is printed in here. You can even have a for loop, something similar to this, and execute it. This is called a for loop, infinite loop. So you can see that the statement never returns back because the condition is empty. That means it's true always, and it keeps executing again and again and again and again and again. The only way to terminate it is by pressing Control C. So type in Control C and it would break out of the loop. If you want to have more fun, you can actually add a statement in here. So here you can add a system.out.println and see that the same thing gets repeated until you press Control plus C. So Control and C, press it both together and you would come out of the infinite loop. So this is what is called an infinite loop, where the loop gets executed continuously forever because there is no condition. The last puzzle that we would want to talk about is, let's say I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, and I would want to print two statements. How do I do that? Yep, use a block. So now I can actually, I pressed a tab by mistake, but that's okay. So system.out.println, I can print number 1, statement number 1, and I can print statement number 2 and close the brace. And you'd see that number 1 and number 2 are printed alternatively. So all that we had to do was do a simple for loop with a block. So we had a block with an open brace and we printed system.out.println number 1 and number 2, and this was the code which we typed in, and this was printing the numbers alternatively. So typically always use blocks with for loop and if statements. That would ensure that your code remains maintainable. In this video, we had a lot of fun with the for loop. We tried to break it as much as possible and tried to discover all the variations around it. I'm sure you had a lot of fun, and until the next video, bye-bye. Welcome to the last video of the first section of this course. In this video, we will revise all the terminology that we have learned until now, as well as we would also discuss a few tips that would help you make even better use of this course. Let's start with the basic terminology. The first terminology that we learned was literal. This was a numeric value 7, right? 7 is a literal in here. So 7.5 is a 7 is an integer literal, 7.5 is a decimal literal. The integer literal is of type int and the decimal literal is of type double. Now try and see the other literals on the screen right now. You can see 1 in here, it's a literal, 10 also is a literal. The next thing that we talked about was expressions. If you look at this statement, table into I is an expression. there is an operator being used, star, and two operands, table and I, and we are using star to multiply them, and this whole thing is called an expression. All programs are made up of statements. If you look at this entire thing in here, this is a statement. This declaration over here is also a statement. Each line of code in your programming languages is typically, most of the times, a statement. Statements are sometimes made up of expressions. For example, if I say int a new number is equal to table into 7. Over here, table into 7 is an expression. The whole thing is called a declaration statement. We are declaring a variable. The next thing we talked about was variables, right? So the new number in here is a variable. A variable is something whose value can change during the program. In this program, I is a variable, table is a variable. I can say table is equal to 8. And over here, I value is changing from 1, it's getting incremented here, and it becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on up to 11. We also were introduced to char data types, which you can print in this way. So this is a char data type. So I would want to store a single character, char ch is equal to a. It's using a single quote. This single quote is right below double quote in your keyboard. Typically you would use shift and press the key which has the double quote on top of it. That's the single quote. One of the things we would need to note is the fact that we did not really extensively talk about either char or boolean or the floating point data types. That's something which we would do in the next sections. The next thing which we talked about was the assignment operator. Over here, this is an assignment operator. It gets copied into table. So the assignment operator is used to populate a value into a variable. So this can also be an expression, right? So the calculated value of this expression is stored into the table variable. After that, we jumped into conditions. I less than equal to 10, I less than 10, I greater than 5, I less than 5. And we also looked at the comparison operator. So I is equal to 2 is table value 7. If table is equal to 7, that means table has a value of 7. Table is equal to 7 is assignment. Table is equal to 7 is comparison operator. We looked at several inbuilt methods, system.out.printf, system.out.println, and also we looked at math.max, math.random, and math.min. An inbuilt function is something which is already predefined as part of your Java libraries. So the system.out.printf is something which is already defined. All that you need to do to use it is to call it. You don't really need to define what it does. This is already defined and we are making use of it. That's a predefined method or a function. The last thing which we looked at was the for loop. So we looked at the syntax for the for loop: initialization followed by condition followed by the update. So in a for loop, you can execute the same statement multiple times. The first time in the for loop, the initialization gets executed, and for all the subsequent iterations, the increment gets executed. The loop executes until this condition remains true. So initialization, check, execution of the code. After that, update, check. If check is true, then code is executed. Again update, and then again check, and if check is true, code is executed. So on and so forth until check remains true. Whenever check becomes false, you would flow out of the loop. This is basically how a for loop works. Those are some of the important things that we learned in all the previous videos in the previous section. I'll leave you with a couple of tips. If you think I'm going too fast or too slow, then you can adjust the speed at which the video is played to you. So the default is 1x, but you can actually make it 1.25, 1.5 or 2x. You can make it faster, or you can even make it slower, 0.75x, 0.5x. If there are places where I'm typing too fast, then you can set it to 0.5x so that you can see it in slow motion, And if you think I'm too slow, then you can go ahead and increase it to 2x as well. So you should find it in the interface of your video player. The other important thing is, if you're thinking I'm typing too fast and it will be difficult for you to learn, do not worry about it at all. I'm sure by the end of this course, you'd be typing as fast as I am. It's all matter of practice. It's all matter of keeping at it and focusing on the code. And over a period of time, you would also be able to type equally fast. I hope you had a nice time during this section. I hope you have learned a lot. And I'm sure there are a lot of outstanding questions in your mind. And that's common. Whenever we start with programming, it's a challenging thing. It's one of the most difficult things to get started with. And the fact that you have actually come up to here is a big thing. So congratulations, and I will see you in the next section. Until then, bye-bye.